Hello, and welcome to Draft Day. My name is John Fleming. I am one of the hosts of Draft Day, and I am joined by, what do you know? I'm joined by another host of Draft Day, Jason Bradshaw. Jason, how are you?
Me, I'm good, John. I'm good. I'm excited to be back here with you and really excited for today's draft. I think it's going to be a fun one. But how you doing? Everything good? Good.
Doing okay. So the thing about Draft Day is we try to have some variety on this show. I think most of our episodes revolve around like the big four professional sports leagues. Um, we know those sports to a varying degree, but we are at least like conversational in all of them. We are going to be covering a sport today that I don't know anything about. I mean, I don't know zero, but it's a low amount. Like legitimately, if we were doing a draft about like Major League Lacrosse, I would be at about this level for it. We are covering the.
Right? Is he still a thing? Sorry, just throwing out my lacrosse knowledge.
I mean, we are coming up on Memorial Day weekend, which is usually when the national championship for lacrosse is. That I'll watch idly while waiting for the Cardinals game to come on, because watching the end of a lacrosse match I don't care about, and then watching the Cardinals lose by 5 is kind of a tradition in honor of the departed troops.
Better now. They're doing better. Not that it was hard to do much worse, but
yeah. But speaking of wrestling and speaking of people who are known for pain when it comes to watching baseball, we are joined by a special guest today. It is a knower of professional wrestling and also a knower of the Miami Marlins. I'm much regret fills my heart for him. You may know him from the wonderful world of Twitch. You may know him from the wonderful world of the podcast Here's a Guy, which I have appeared on 3 total times, 2 of which he was present for, but brought him on anyway. We are joined by JackJohn. JackJohn, how are you?
I'm doing great. I love hearing Cardinals fans talk about how bad the year is when the Marlins still exist. And I had to look it up. They've won 16 games, and I was surprised the number was that high.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be completely exhausting here. Most fan base. Though I will point out that the Marlins did finish with a better record than the Cardinals last year because they made the playoffs, and the Cardinals famously did not.
Which is something, as a Marlins fan, it's still shocking for me to be like, oh yeah, no, that did happen. But I'm doing good.
I was going to say the Marlins are managed by possibly Jason's favorite baseball player ever. The Skip Schumacher experience.
I proudly owned a Skip Schumacher jersey, and on a prior episode we talked about how it became a viral moment on NBC Sports one day. But yeah, I'm a big Skip fan. I know he laid into Sixto a little bit. I saw the other day, so that was always fun to see. Because I remember being really excited when I had a bunch of Sixto Sanchez cards. I'm like, oh, this just isn't panning out how I was.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk some wrestling today. John, I'm excited just to see your reaction of wrestling today. I think more than anything else. I know you told me you were like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are going to be talking about, but I'm very excited to listen in, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, the reason that I know that I'm going to enjoy this, even if I'm not going to understand it, is because on the podcast that you co-host, Here's a Guy, you frequently delve into the world of professional wrestling, and they are never people that I'm familiar with going into it, because like we'll talk a little bit about your podcast, but a basic rule is you're not going to cover like Hulk Hogan, who's like
Right.
You're not going to cover like Andre the Giant. Like I know who those guys are, but we got a cat cameo.
As Pancake the cat yells at me.
Yeah, I think that we haven't had a dog cameo yet, I don't think. He barked a little bit before, but I think it was before we started recording, but we'll prepare for it. But so I actually, since I didn't really have to prepare very much for the draft purposes of this, I actually do have a little list that I prepared that I know that JackJohn is looking forward to. But before I reveal this list, you know, just sort of, and we'll have you plug your socials and your stuff, but just sort of tell us what you do.
Yeah, so the main thing that I do on the internet here is the podcast Here's a Guy, which John has talked about. It's basically a weekly or mostly weekly dive into the people your history books probably didn't cover who definitely deserve their own little chapter. Uh, Wacky antics and really just the greatest stories that you can like. If Cracked was still as popular as it was, like a lot of these people would still be on like Cracked.com listicles and like stuff like that, where it's just like, here's this completely insane person and their little pocket of history. Like they permanently marked it for better or worse. We've discussed many flying contraptions gone wrong, failed assassins. Alex, my co-host, covered the inventor of leaded gasoline and how horrible that has transpired afterwards. It's really just like a
Well,
fun history lesson.
he didn't only invent leaded
Yeah,
gasoline.
yeah.
He also invented Freon.
Yeah, that is the hook there at the end. Is also he did more, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Recently, I've covered just some insanely wacky people, and as John's alluded to, also some wacky wrestling people. Some of which might come up later. We'll see what happens, but it's fun history in the most absurd way possible.
Yeah, and it's a podcast that I listen to and very much enjoy. And if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't listened to Here's a Guy, you should check it out because there are like hundreds of episodes in the back catalog. Well, not, I mean, there's over 100, I should say. But they're
Hundreds of
like,
guys.
for the most part, they're pretty timeless episodes. Like maybe you'll discuss like a little bit of what's going on in the world, but for the most part, what's being discussed happens from all sorts of periods of time. The best way that I could sum this up is that the last 2 years, your podcast has run a bracket during March to determine who like the listeners like most guy of the year is. The last 2 years, so the guy that won the most recent tournament was an ancient philosopher who lived in a big wine jar and like peed on people a lot, and is generally a very strange man.
Yes,
The,
Diogenes.
yes, the year before that was a guy who lives in New Zealand and was declared the official wizard of the country because he dresses up like a wizard and is basically just a huge troll that for some reason everybody embraces. And in both years, the runner-up was the guy that attempted to assassinate Franklin Roosevelt and failed because he was too short.
Yeah. Well, like
Shouts
honestly,
to Giuseppe Zangara.
Giuseppe Zangara is like the unofficial mascot of our show because anytime that we can mention how short somebody is, how annoying and is how like mischievous somebody is, it's always like on the barometer of how Giuseppe they are, basically. And Giuseppe being like not even a short king, like an angry 4'11" man. I think he wasn't that short, but he was basically just.
I think he was like 5 foot.
Yeah. 4'11"
Yeah.
versus 5 foot.
Yeah, but there's a wide range of like there are some guys who are covered that are very heroic. There's some guys that are covered that aren't guys at all. There's some gals. There's people like Giuseppe who you can't really call Giuseppe like one of the most evil men in the world because they require some level of basic productivity. But not a good guy certainly. But
right, a lot of villains get covered.
Yeah, so in honor of your presence on this podcast, I have prepared my top 5 JackJohn presented topics from Here's a Guy. So actually, I believe all 3 of the topics that we just discussed from the tournament were ones that your co-host slash my former baseball podcast co-host Alex Turpin covered.
Yes.
But here is my ranking. Number 5 from episode 77, Steve Lightfoot.
Yes.
Steve Lightfoot is a conspiracy theorist about a famous assassination. There's a lot of those. I think most conspiracy theorists are like definitively guys. There it is.
Framed in my office is a pamphlet that I got in the mail from Steve Lightfoot. One of my all-time favorite topics.
So Steve Lightfoot, unlike most conspiracy theorists, mostly focuses on the John Lennon assassination. and his belief is that he was assassinated by Stephen King. And for some reason, JackJohn bought a book from him and has received mail from him. So he has your address.
Yeah, my wife wasn't happy about that one.
Fair enough. Yeah, Jason's staying mostly silent during this segment, but he is dying laughing at this.
Oh
Yeah,
my god!
Don't worry.
I'm trying to
You're
work
really-
with the audio.
Really underselling Steve Lightfoot, because Steve Lightfoot travels the country in what can be best described as a murder-looking van, with it plastered of like conspiracy truth website information on only the author Stephen King.
Yes. And this guy's my number 5, so there is more. My number 4 is probably the most famous person. Not that you've covered it as a whole, but that is covered on my list. Founding Father Gouverneur Morris.
Yes.
He was one of the more historically decent founding fathers. He was vehemently anti-slavery, though I believe it's mostly just because he hated the South. Which, I mean, if you're going to take the anti-slavery stance, I'm not going to argue that much about how you reach that conclusion, even if it wasn't necessarily the... but anyway, Gouverneur Morris is notable for constantly sleeping around, traveling the world to sleep around, and... should I say how Gouverneur Morris died, or JackJohn, would you like to present how he died? Because I think that's kind of the most important part of the story.
It is the reason that he gets a footnote specifically as a founding father is the way that he ended up dying, which is honestly it fits the here's a guy mold, and that it's just so wacky that it sounds fake. But after a rousing night of sleeping around and almost getting caught, he leaves. He goes to clean out a urinary tract infection, but all he can manage to find at the time is a long pointy object. He goes to do the unblockaging, and he stabs himself and dies.
And what is the object that he used?
It was I can picture the picture. A whalebone. Okay, yeah. As I can picture it, it's There's a very, very famous painting of him holding a whalebone, and it's really just putting it on the nose of here's why you know Gouverneur Morris if you do.
I have not seen that painting, nor will I be looking it up.
It's just him sitting in a chair holding a whalebone.
Still don't want to think about it too much. Number 3 on my list, from episode 91, Michael Malloy. So Michael Malloy, a man who was born in Ireland, moved to New York City, and in the 1930s, a group of men took out a life insurance policy against him through a very corrupt individual, and basically just tried to kill him with booze. And they were completely incapable of doing it. This man had a higher tolerance for alcohol than anyone that's ever lived, and they eventually just didn't even bother to try to have him die of alcohol poisoning. They just straight up killed him.
Yeah, the man who refused to die even when they were just overtly trying to kill him.
Yeah, and one of my favorite tidbits, and you mentioned this in the episode, is that there's a Primus song named after him.
Yeah,
which the exact guy that Primus would name a song after. I think it's an instrumental, but still, it fits their aesthetic. All right, number 2 is maybe the most tragic character that you've ever covered. Amazingly, I'm not going with the guy that was present for both Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Okay.
He did survive, so I'm therefore not calling him. Episode 36, you covered George Spencer, who is a 17th century man from Connecticut who was apparently loud, dumb, and obnoxious, but also extremely ugly.
Yes.
So, he was tried and executed for fathering a child with a pig.
And why did they think he fathered that pig?
It was basically just because he was ugly, right? It wasn't really...
Yep. The pig came out deformed, and they were like, well, clearly the only way for that to have happened is that ugly dude over there is the reason.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And he was the one who was dumb. Got it.
Yeah. The whole town just kind of hated him, and they were like basically fishing for a reason to cleanly execute him.
Yeah, he does seem I know that one of his big things was in Connecticut was a very religious territory that he was like very vocally anti-religious. He sounds like very much like a Reddit atheist where he's just like extremely loud and extremely annoying about it. It's like, look, if you just like shut up, you could probably slide under the radar, but my number one topic, and actually I want to see JackJohn, can you guess what my number one for you is?
I think we've talked about this before, and I think you said it's the reason you started listening to Here's a Guy.
No, but there is a guy that is Felix Carvajal.
Yes, that's who I was thinking.
The reason I started listening. He is not my number one, though. Felix Carvajal, the man who was a Cuban mailman who ran in the 1904 Olympic marathon and finished fourth despite taking a nap during it, is definitely a wonderful man. But from episode 42, I'm going with Corporal Wojtek.
Yes!
Corporal Wojtek was a brown bear who was adopted as a cub by Polish soldiers during World War II. He would just kind of hang out with the guys. He was just sort of a dude. He would drink beer with them and eat their cigarettes whenever they were done. He was officially enlisted so that he could get like rations. Just a cool guy, even though he's a bear. Was actually promoted to corporal based on things that he actually did during the war. The pictures, if anyone's listening and has not seen Corporal Wojtek, you should definitely look up photos of him because it is adorable.
It's a little bear in a hat saluting.
Yeah, if you go to the Wikipedia page and it's spelled Wojtek, it's like just a picture of him just like sitting like a very good boy and a soldier just giving him some sort of food, I think it is, but
yeah,
maybe it was a cigarette, I'm not sure.
This is adorable.
What I love, especially about like history of like the first two world wars and like wars and like the surrounding like bookends of that era, is like a lot of people were just like, all right, like I've got this pet and I don't want to leave him at home, so can you just like enlist him real quick? And it worked like most of the time. Like most of the animals we've covered on Here's a Guy were soldiers.
Yeah, I think possibly most of the children you've covered were also soldiers.
Yeah, that was a really, really dark topic.
Yeah, there are a lot of World War II related and World War I related folks, but JackJohn's always are filled with a certain level of whimsy, which I appreciate. As you can probably
good.
As you can tell, I kind of lean toward like some of the more whimsical and goofy topics.
Yeah. There's definitely an amount of like, okay, what's the hook that I can find with this guy in a lot of my like searching out for my next topics. So I appreciate that those were your favorites. Those are some of my all-time favorites as well.
Yeah, so looking back at my list, there's only one that's still alive, which of course is Steve Lightfoot. Have you guys like reached out to him to try to get him on the pod? Because I feel like of all, he might be the person in the hit that's been covered on the show that you're most likely to actually get to show up. Because like, what else is he possibly doing?
So I've had that inner debate a lot, and the reason that I don't want to is I've read his blog, and there's a lot like he thinks Obama tried to kill him multiple times because of like near traffic accidents. Like he's a conspiracy theorist, but also he's like way over the deep end and has my address.
Yeah,
that's the hook of like, okay, well now I definitely like it'd be funny if he didn't know where I lived.
So Jason, Steve Lightfoot doesn't know where either of us live, to my knowledge. So if we ever need to get him on for a draft,
draft,
I have his email.
We could do like Stephen King like movie adaptations and just like be like glowingly talking about like The Shining or Shawshank or whatever. Talk about like Stand By Me. It's like, oh, it's just a really wholesome guy, it seems like. And it's like,
here's why Cujo is the perfectly written book.
He was great in It Chapter 2. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's Chapter 2 where he's a bookstore owner or whatever.
yeah, so we have our sort of list of potential topics or potential guests that I have not officially written Steve Lightfoot in, but I think we know where this is heading.
No,
Kind of
a legitimate thought
hoping
I've
that Jack
had.
John can kind of hook us up. Yeah.
I'll slide you the email because I had PayPal to like buy his manifesto, and it didn't go through for like a week, and I was like, oh, I got scammed. I'm okay losing $10 to a crazy person I'm using for content. And then like a week or two later, from his personal email, he emailed me because my PayPal has my email and name everything, and he was like, hey, I saw this came through. My website doesn't work, but I'll send it to you. So I have his personal correspondence email, so I'll send it to you.
Whenever you opened up that package, did you put your ear up to it first to listen to it, or like keep it from a distance? You have a small child, so I'm just making sure that this was.
Yeah, I really, really. My wife was like, "You need to get a PO box now," and I was like, "You're right."
All right, that it's worth considering, but we are not here to talk about Here's a Guy. Ironically, as I steal Alex's segue, we're here to talk about some wrestlers. And as far as I can tell, the two of you have a format figured out. I'm basically just going to be like the judge on this episode. I'll write down the answers and just kind of like Google people and draw my own conclusions of. Do either of you want to kind of explain the rules of the road here?
I mean, I can take a stab at it here. Not really a whole lot. The idea is we're drafting 10 wrestlers each, and it will be to essentially start a promotion with. So for anyone not familiar with wrestling, promotion would be like the company. So WWE, AEW, TNA, whoever. And the idea is it is open all time. You can select tag teams to be one draft pick. I think we've come to kind of an agreement off air about maybe not taking like short-term tag teams that were megastars and that kind of thing. But once a person's gone any iteration, for the most part, they're off the board unless it's like a guy who completely changed his gimmick or girl who's changed their gimmick, and each of their gimmicks get taken. Outside of that, no restrictions on men, women, anything of that. But I think that, we're going to have a lot of fun with this. I mean, before John, you hopped on, me and him were just, it was like instant, like Karma spitballing just about wrestling and stuff. So I think it could go off the rails.
Okay, I think I heard you say. So I heard you say Inst Karma. Are we talking about the John assassination again?
I mean,
look, Steve Lightfoot just has questions.
Yeah.
Say, I know a guy. Well, I know a guy who knows a guy, if you know. And by know a guy, I mean I've known a guy officially for about 20, 30 minutes here. So, but yeah,
right, well,
we talked about it, and instead of playing pool like John and I normally do, despite my hot streak that I'm on, we have agreed that we will let our guest, Mr. JackJohn, go first in selecting in the wrestling promotion draft thing do. And I'm excited, really, more than anything this episode, to hear your commentary, John, because either you reacting or you getting really excited if we pick somebody you've heard of.
My dog is roaring with approval for the but Jack John, you are up first. I will let you decide whether you want to pick or whether you want to sing us in like it's an episode of Here's a Guy.
Yeah, I'll sing us in, and I think I remember it. It's
all right.
The draft.
Perfect. Love it. All right. I was kind of not sure what word
clip it and use it every week.
All right.
We're just gonna use it as our intro music.
There you go.
All right, Jack John, you are up.
Sing a word and just mash it together. It'd be perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So first overall pick is hard. So we had talked about it before we started recording. My list is like a combination of wrestlers who are like top of the world class, but also just my favorite wrestlers. and it'd be really easy just to pick like the PWI like top ranking top 10, go all the way down. But I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it'd
With
be
that
very
s-
easy. I definitely know what that is. I'm definitely.
That's basically just like it's like imagine in like a college recruiting draft board, like the top 10 prospects. Like I could take those guys, and it'd be any list on the internet, but I want it to be my own. But with that said, my first overall pick is probably the top wrestler for a lot of people because it's just one of my all-time favorites. He's so good, has proven to be a champion across the world. I have to take number one overall, Kazuchika Okada. One of just the best looking wrestlers in terms of like physique and presentation. His finisher, the Rainmaker, is a beautiful thing to look at and also just to yell at the top of your lungs when he hits it on somebody. Um, his rivalries across Japan as well as in the States are just incredible. He looks like an anime final boss because he is. He's also featured in the Yakuza games as a fighter. Like he literally is like a final boss looking dude. He's got to be my number one overall.
Yeah, and
I'm glad you analogized it to video games, which is a realm that I know, I guess, a little bit better, but not.
But like, he literally like so the Yakuza games have, or they're now called Like a Dragon because Japanese games being named after the Yakuza, not great. But
Yeah, that seems fair.
It's Yakuza 6 and I think Yakuza 0. But he literally is a playable character because New Japan Pro Wrestling had like a tie-in with them, and he's literally just like a boss, like a final boss looking dude because he is. But yeah, such like a fun like I usually don't like watching hour-long wrestling matches, but I love his hour-long wrestling matches.
yeah, I mean, it's so funny to like think of like a guy who, keep in mind, this guy is like I think he's 36 years old. He's
Yeah,
literally been in professional wrestling for like half of his life at this point.
yeah.
From when he started getting into, he started in New Japan. Then I think he went to TNA, if I
He had
remember.
like a sabbatical in TNA to
Yeah, and then went back to New Japan until he came back over. And I guess, was it straight to AEW, or did he go?
He went to AEW, yeah, play straight.
So it's, which I don't know. That could be a whole nother discussion about AEW. It's like,
Yeah, he's a current champion there, but I'm mostly drafting him on his New Japan work.
New Japan. John, and as somebody, I'm assuming, John, you've never watched any wrestling in New Japan ever.
I would also assume that. Yeah.
So like, it's not like watching American wrestling, I guess, in a lot of ways. But it's where a lot of guys who are in American promotions will go to get better technically to then come back.
Yeah.
We've seen it. Sorry, go ahead.
So my very limited understanding of kind of pro wrestling in Japan versus pro wrestling in the United States is that the US tends to go a little bit more like campy. Is that right, or am I misunderstanding that? Like more theatrical, I guess.
I would say yeah. So US wrestling is very much in like the, as my grandma would put it, her soap opera level of wrestling. Like she would call her soaps because it's very dramatic and theatrical. In Japan, there's a thing called strong style, where it's literally just hitting the person, like physically hitting them. And Japanese wrestlers do it better than anybody.
Oh yeah, and it's for people who may not know who Okada is, obviously Shinsuke Nakamura in the WWE he came in as the king of strong style, which, I mean, very, very good wrestler in the ring in his own right. And they let him cut promotions in Japanese instead of trying to be in English. He's fantastic, and they don't utilize him enough. But I digress. I mean, that's it's so funny to think about, like, seeing your approach to this, honestly, JackJohn, and like I'm like, oh crud, I was thinking more like possibly the draft board, and it's like, so we may be on complete opposite ends, and it's perfect.
Yeah, I have 20 names on my list just in case, but it's also because I couldn't decide who I wanted.
Yeah, I think I have like 28 written down, and this was just like quick firing off because it's
right.
And I guess in terms too, like we were talking, at least like with how long that we've been kind of into wrestling more and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's funny because you kind of have a more continuous stream for the last 9-10 years.
Yeah.
Whereas me, it was like back in the late 90s, early 2000s I picked it back up a couple of years ago. So there's going to be a lot of things in between that I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that was a thing. Or
yeah. I started getting back into wrestling in around 2016, which is right around the time that Okada started having like his incredible first run at the top of New Japan. So I was going to do this for everybody, but I didn't have like it would just be kind of boring. But if you're going to go and like try to look up matches from any of these people, Kazuchika Okada versus Kenny Omega, any of their 4 matches, if you have an hour to kill, watch them. He's so good. I subscribed to a Japanese wrestling service so I could watch wrestling live at 3 a.m. in the States in Japanese just to see how good this dude is.
They are some phenomenal matches. I'll echo that. I actually like that. Giving, if you can, just be like, hey, check out this particular thing, or obviously with some of them, there's a lot more to maybe choose from, and
right.
Maybe harder to find some of his New Japan stuff online.
Yeah.
Some of the more mainstream, but now I'm just stalling as I'm still trying to figure out my first pick.
I feel like the second overall pick, you should probably have some idea where you're going.
I have an idea. It's just which way do I want to go?
Yeah, to be fair, I knew who my number 1 pick would be. I have 4 different people I want for my number 2, so I'm kind of in the same boat. It was just like, all right, what do I follow that with?
Yeah, and it's... So, all right. What I'm looking here, my first pick is... So, John, are you familiar with the terms babyface or faces and heels within wrestling?
I actually thought about asking if Okada was a face or a heel just so that I could sound like I knew something. But yes, I do know what they are.
Wiener?
Yeah, I think he's technically a heel, but he's just so beloved that people just cheer him anyway.
There's a few examples, and some of my people, like, I literally have a list of like baby faces, heels, but then I have like 2 or 3 names, and I'm like, they're in the middle.
Right.
And so, you know what? In your vein, it's a guy I had near the top anyway, but a guy I'm going to take, and it's going to be a guy, and I'm taking him from, this is how crazy it's going to be, one specific night of wrestling.
Ooh.
And this is from November 2nd, 1998. The man went to the same university as I did. That is...
Oh, God. I know who this is going to be.
That is Kane.
Oh,
Destruction in 1998.
It's gotta be Kane.
When he just came out, and are you familiar with his Night of Destruction in 1998 on Raw? He came out like 4 or 5 times and just interrupted matches, choke slammed everybody, made fire come up out of the ring, and then he left.
Kane at his most jacked and most intimidating.
Yeah, it's like and it's so funny because like I really liked him. As I was a kid, I liked him because I'm like, like. Another thing I wanted to have is, and I think good American wrestling has always had like that one supernatural kind of character.
Yep.
And being, he was brought in at, I forget, he was introduced at one of the pay-per-views they were called at the time.
Yeah, it was In Your House. It was the Steel Cage.
And he was introduced as the Undertaker's brother that he like left in their house as it was burning. So like he had a mask on because supposedly his body was terribly burned. Now, when they actually did the face reveal of it, it's the most hilarious thing in the world. If you want to watch that, where it looks like they just put some like gray powder makeup on his face. It's like
he has like a half haircut because they shaved the front half of his head, but he still had a mask on, so he had the back half.
So he had the big,
and he looks like a chimney sweep.
It's so good, but like I won't lie, my love for Kane went up after I found out that he attended the same university that John and I went to. And
he's not from Missouri, right?
No, he's where is he from? I can look it up real quick.
Because he played football, I think.
But he didn't grow up there. But yeah, he and for anybody who doesn't know what he does now,
oh God.
He's the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee.
Mayor Glenn Jacobs.
Mayor Glenn Jacobs. He was actually just in my town recently, and I was really sad. I was out of town with my family and couldn't go to it was a Comic-Con that he was at, and I wanted so badly to have him sign my Truman State hat that I have. Like that would be like, oh.
So is he still the mayor there? Because he's been the mayor there for a while, right?
Second term in 22, so he's still there. I mean, and really by all accounts, not that this, there are some wrestlers who are very much not this, but seems like a very nice, genuine, just good dude. Very large.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really,
but
I mean, the full extent of what I know about him, other than his real name, is the fact that he attended the Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri. He had nothing else to do up there besides do exercise.
The Division II powerhouse. That's not at all a powerhouse, but
that's right.
For me as a kid, I loved the two polar opposites. I either loved the little high flyers or just the big brooding, I'll call them the Vince McMahon types, because that's all Vince McMahon was, big beefy guys.
Yeah.
Beating each other up. And Kane was just it was interesting to me, because when you're a 9-10-year-old kid, hearing about this guy who was left in a fire, and he's the Undertaker's brother, and the Undertaker's just about the biggest thing in the world at this time. I mean,
yeah.
And it was so much fun. And I remember to this day, I still get viscerally angry at every single Royal Rumble, because Kane has never won a Royal Rumble. It's the guy's that dominant. He shouldn't be, losing to the likes even a guy like Stone Cold who won multiple. It's Kane would pick him up and just throw him out.
I think Kane even had the elimination record for most eliminations in a single Rumble for a long time too.
Yeah, until Lesnar broke it, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's and I remember watching that, because the Rumble was always it might still be my favorite just single event to watch.
Yes.
Just because it's chaos, you never know who's going to show up. But and he's a guy who, after they ripped his mask off too, just in general, while I love it, the masked Kane is probably the best. Boy, some of the later masks when they tried to put it back on him he looked like a demented Vega from Street Fighter.
I did like See No Evil era Kane, where he just looked evil and demented to the point where they literally just made that a horror villain, and it worked.
Yeah, and it's but then at the end he was oh, this is corporate Kane, where he's running in a shirt and tie.
Yeah,
and he's working for the man.
They tried to do the Abyss thing, where it's split personality, insane person, but it didn't quite land.
Yeah, it's it just honestly, corporate Kane reminded me of the Attitude Era right to censor. So when the Godfather became the Good Father, and you have all these guys that are bad that got oh, they're good now, and
yes,
it was just I love looking at John's face. He's it's have you ever seen the movie Good Burger? It's Ed reading the contract. He's mm-hmm. I know some of these words. That's John at this moment right now.
I covered The Godfather on Here's the Guy, so I think John is at least familiar with The Godfather.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with The Godfather / Goodfather, and I'm familiar with Kane, again, for reasons that have nothing to do with his wrestling. But also, I will not stand for Jason disparaging the athletic programs at the only public university in Missouri that's ever produced a basketball Hall of Famer, Truman State University, and Harry Gallatin, who
shout out to the horse,
who played for the Knicks in the 50s.
Yeah, if you look up his career stats, it's I'm not really sure why this guy's a Hall of Famer, but we're proud to claim him. He has a shrine.
Poor man's George Mikan.
Yeah. But yeah. So Night of Destruction Kane in particular, though, where I like chaos in wrestling matches, and it's just fun. All right, JackJohn, I'll let you do your next pick here.
Yeah. For my number 2 pick, I'm gonna pick who's probably my favorite wrestler of all time, and it's really just because of one rivalry he has. He's had other good stints as himself. But in particular, it's his rivalries in the 90s and rekindled in the 2000s. I'm going to take Mike Awesome, only because of what he does when he's wrestling Masato Tanaka. Mike Awesome is what I think of just, like you alluded to, big, beefy dude who hits really hard. But also, Mike Awesome can fly off the top rope, and it's terrifying. If you want, my favorite match of all time is the one night stand Mike Awesome versus Masato Tanaka, because it is just a car crash of meat in like the best possible way. The way that Mike Awesome can jump onto the top rope and springboard to the crowd and do it with precision at a man who's like 6'7", 280. There's just something about it. He's always been my favorite because of those matches. He can be a brawling hardcore fighter. He can have technical wrestling. It's so fun to watch. His story is tragic. What WCW did to him is borderline criminal when they made him the fat chick thriller, Mike Awesome. And that 80s guy, Mike Awesome.
Could you repeat the thing before that 80s guy? I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
They made his gimmick that he loved large women, and they called him the fat chick thriller, Mike Awesome.
That was around the time that like Bad Santa came out. It's probably just kind of play off that. I know this is going to shock you. I'm not familiar with this wrestler, but I did just look him up, and he looks like basically, if I'm imagining like a wrestler from the 50s, that like the wrestling at the Chase kind of era guy, he looks like that.
He's got a look of a dude who can beat your ass.
Yeah, and I mean he's definitely one of those guys. And the craziness. Yeah, when WCW that was about the time they were starting to flounder in comparison to WWF, and they were, we'll try anything to get Nitro versus Raw.
He won't be, if I get my way, he won't be my only ECW draft, but like him and ECW is just like that perfect amount of like ECW trying to hit mainstream while still staying true to themselves in like car crash destruction. It's not pretty wrestling, but it's fun to watch kind of wrestling.
Yeah, he was very much like part of like the personification of ECW, I think.
Yeah.
And John, think of ECW was, I guess at least for a period of time, definitely like it was the premier area where you'd find what I would refer to sometimes as garbage wrestling, where there's just a lot of brutality involved, weapons.
Yeah.
It
was counterculture, but it wasn't like polished counterculture, if that makes sense. Like it was very rough. Very much you're watching it on like a borrowed tape from somebody with static lines coming across the TV. Like it's very, very rough, but that's what gives it its charm.
And then, like so many other ones, eventually swallowed up by the beast.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you just a random ECW thing in general, like very fun when you had kind of like the ECW takeover when Heyman came in and had all the ECW guys. And what a gem WWE Hall of Famer Paul Heyman is.
Yes.
But like, then because in that, I think eventually it led to like the Survivor Series where it was like Team WWE versus the Alliance or whatever. And,
if you get a chance to like, again, I think it's my favorite match, but Masato Tanaka versus Mike Awesome in ECW, it's so good. They had a trilogy of matches. I think it was a trilogy. They also ran it back at ECW One Night Stand in 2006 or is it 2005? One of the original one, whatever it was. But Mike Awesome, he's so fun to watch.
Yeah, he was a guy who the shift and kind of what he did in switching companies, like it slowed down.
Yeah,
he had so much, and obviously, I mean, a thing here, another person that, in ways, gone too soon from ways that are very unfortunate. We see in pro wrestling a lot.
Yeah,
I believe he was in his mid to late 40s when
he was very young. Yeah,
passed. So
I pulled up his Wikipedia page and I saw that he died by suicide in 2007. And I don't know a lot of wrestling lore, but I know of another suicide that happened in 2007, so it started making me think about that.
And for my number 3 pick now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It goes without saying, like, this is in ring. Like, there's been a lot of wrestlers do bad things. Like, I'll say this, Alberto Del Rio's not on my list, but that dude not a good dude. I mean,
No, everything I've heard about him is just no,
yeah,
absolutely
more stuff
not.
he's thrown out, but he's still trying to work his way back through the Indies,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, I don't remember what this guy's name was, but I remember that JackJohn covered a wrestler one time where basically the entire conceit was that he was actually like a super nice, super charitable guy, but like he
Titus
just
O'Neil.
constantly he just like constantly messed up and everyone hated him.
No, everyone. Titus O'Neil, they loved him, but
Like
he
in a
was like
kayfabe way.
He was oafable, very oafable.
I mean, he has the greatest blunder of all time
Yes,
at the world's great. What is it? The
the
largest
greatest Royal Rumble.
where he got the greatest. He used to be called Titus Worldwide, but they started calling him Titus World Slide because he slipped and like fell under the ring while he was running into the. It's
Like a
so
foot away
good.
from dying because he could have like hit the steel post that holds the ring up, but somehow Looney Tunes his way under it.
and to his credit, then the next Royal Rumble they like made a joke out of it where he like gets down, but then he ends up like crawling under the ring chasing somebody, and he played it off well, but
Yeah,
he was definitely in a thing where they were trying to go for like guys that look good and then just
yeah.
weren't great in ring. But
apparently Mike Awesome looked the part and acted the part, so
Yes.
understood. But Jason, you're up now. Number
yeah,
4.
it's funny that we went ECW because I feel like at number 2 I have to take the man I would consider Mr. ECW in some ways. Yeah, I'm gonna take Tommy Dreamer at number 2.
Yep.
Dude, like his feud with Raven in the mid '90s,
Yes.
so good. And he's a guy who, when you see him, like you look at him like, oh, I could be a professional wrestler if that's the body I have to maintain. He's not like out of shape, but he's in like dad shape, and he has been for 30 years.
Tommy Dreamer looks like the guy at the bar at Chili's. Like
Pretty much.
you're just like, I
Yeah.
think he could kick my ass, but maybe I have a chance.
Yeah, it's deceptive for sure.
So in his picture on Wikipedia, he is wearing a New York Jets jacket. That feels right, based on what he looks like in general.
He's very proudly from Yonkers. Like that's a known thing about Tommy Dreamer.
I didn't realize people were proudly from Yonkers, but okay. I mean, I'm sure Yonkers is fine, but I didn't realize that was a civic pride sort of thing. Like I'm almost from New York City.
And he was a guy, who definitely in the hardcore realm, like him and Raven, two of the best to do hardcore, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In terms of how they did it. But he was a guy who, as it was coming up and through, like he helped carry and elevate. And he was a guy who then, in the middle of it, like was part of WWE still for like 9 or 10 years. Not as front and center, but then he's like, oh, I'll just go back to ECW. And, when they brought it kind of back there in the mid 2000s or whatever, he went back and it was like, okay. And then, like, I mean, he's still involved in like stuff that I think he's a promoter now, or he's, running independent stuff now.
Yeah.
I think he ended awkwardly to me a little bit in like TNA for a year, but he's a guy who you can sell his name. You can bring him back in just about any promotion and you say it's Tommy Dreamer. He's got to get a pop.
Yeah.
For you. And just like a guy who, like, maybe it's more for his importance to wrestling and outside of and the ECW crowd and stuff. Like, I wouldn't necessarily even say that he's like the, he's not like maybe the guys you've mentioned, JackJohn, in the ring, where he's gonna like wow you, but he just, I don't know, there's something just about him. Like, I gravitate to this guy.
Yeah.
And he just has an aura about him.
There were people in ECW who were better wrestlers, but nobody was a better heart for ECW than Tommy Dreamer.
And maybe he was too, compared to some of the people in ECW, like great mic skills. He's really good on the mic. And I mean, it's funny because I think in today's landscape of wrestling, that's what you're seeing more and more, maybe in general, with people who should be like Ricochet should be one of the biggest stars in WWE, but he's terrible on the mic.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Samantha Urban. He's bad on the mic.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't do it. So that's, I mean, and you've seen it with other people. I mean, the reason Brock Lesnar had Paul Heyman is because Brock Lesnar wasn't good on the mic. So you get a manager who's fantastic and can talk for him.
But also, Brock Lesnar talking is just funny because his voice doesn't match his body.
I'm gonna say, and now to be fair, speaking of people that have apparently now done bad things that are involved in wrestling, hey Brock Lesnar, but
So I don't know that I've ever heard Brock Lesnar speak before. I know he's from Minnesota though. So does he sound like he's like a character in Fargo or something? What does his voice sound like?
I mean, he has like a ranch in Canada, is where he lives now.
He has a voice that's like 1 or 2 octaves higher than you think it should be, and it just doesn't fit.
So is
Steroids,
it like not like Mike Tyson level high
It's
pitched,
not
I assume,
that
but
bad. There's a promo leading up to WrestleMania 20 where he was challenging Goldberg, and he like is like yelling, and he's like Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg. Like it's like it doesn't fit his physique at all, and it just kind of like there's like yeah, okay, cool. He's never talking again.
But man, Party Brock was a time.
Oh, Boombox Brock was fantastic.
But yeah, it's we went off there. But yes, Tommy Dreamer, I think just in terms of these types of things, and at least like hardcore when it was huge. I mean, really making it more of a mainstay. I guess even stateside, obviously, like places like Puerto Rico, it had become a very big thing, and that's when like we were having a lot of the importation, if you will. Like kind of like what they did, was it Backlash last year when they kind of played a lot of homage to that and stuff in San Juan. But just really brought it, and it was a big thing. Like they don't do those anymore hardly. Like they may do street fights once in a while, but like there was a hardcore championship for a long time between ECW had one, WWE had one. It was a big part of wrestling, was the whole like and there may be other people who have various aspects of this that was very big. And I mean, even today, like if you can get out a table, the crowd just starts chanting "Get the tables!"
Yeah,
as soon as the match starts, because we love seeing guys go through tables, or flaming tables, or fly off ladders through 2 tables. Oh wait, I think I'm just recounting Edge matches now. But
I think you were describing a Bills tailgate.
Now I'm just imagining Tommy Dreamer at a Bills tailgate.
Dude,
I mean, he's from New York. Granted, not from that part of New York, but
yeah,
I can see it happening. Like if they're playing the Jets, maybe he drives up there. All right, numero tres.
All right, for my third pick, I think I'm going to jump on this one because I think this is somebody who you might take, but this is a wrestler who really impacted my taste as a child in terms of just like look, ability, and we haven't really talked about it enough. Having just a badass fucking theme song. I'm gonna take for my number 3 pick. I'm gonna take Lita, one of the best women's wrestlers of her era. She's come back even and still held her own, but a 4-time women's champion in an era where people didn't care enough about women's wrestling. She came out to like this like metal deathcore like theme song that just wasn't really a thing at a time. Most people hated it, but I loved it as someone who loves metal music.
It's such a good theme because it starts out when you first hear it, it doesn't sound metally. It's kind of got that like guitar strum, and then
it just breaks in so heavy, and you're just like, all right, it's about to get real. And
she was a perfect foil with the Hardys when she was
yes,
breaking in and stuff, like about that punk rock kind of like
very alternative style core, like, but also could go in the ring just so impressively. Her moonsault, her ability to go through a table, her rivalry with Trish Stratus, like it's she as like when I was a kid, like she was women's wrestling to me. And just like so good.
I think it was her and Trish were definitely carrying that Divas era. And really even paving the way, like, I don't think you'd argue with me, like, where we're at now is by far, like, the best women's wrestling has been, and it rivals, like, I mean, 2 years ago, the women's division was carrying the WWE.
Yes,
You had Becky, Charlotte, Ronda, even though I never loved her, she was a big name.
Yeah.
All these people who are coming up now, it starts back, but they even, like you said, they brought Lita back. They brought Trish back to kind of do these things with Becky or whatever they're doing now. Like, and it was funny because I remember when she came back for like the first women's rumble, like you
Yeah.
saw her and you're like, oh, okay, she like was still in shape, but you're like, okay, you look like you haven't been in wrestling in a while. But like she went back and hit the gym, and when she came back, she was like looking as good as ever almost. I mean,
Right.
20 years later, you're not going to be as quick, but
Yeah.
she's still doing lead assaults and
Yeah. When your finisher is moonsaulting and landing on your back, like I'll understand why you can't walk in a straight line anymore. But
oh,
like at her prime, at her peak, like even like against some of the men, like none really better than her in just terms of just like charisma and like capturing a crowd's attention.
oh yeah, and to me too, I think what was cool is like you hit the nail on the head. There was a fair number of women at that time, but I think skill wise in the ring, there was nobody comparable. A lot of them were just kind of there to, do the
Yeah.
occasional bitch slap or,
Yeah.
I mean, we were literally, this is the time period, John, you have to understand, there were also things called bra and panties matches, whereas literally two women going at it and the winner won when they tore their clothes off and got them down to their bra and panties. Like,
Yeah.
and this was on cable television for kids
Yeah.
to watch. There's a reason my brother and I watched it
Yeah.
in the basement and my parents weren't around when we watched wrestling.
Yeah.
So but yeah, Lita, I mean, she was definitely on my list of women.
In
Definitely
an
of it,
in
but
an era where women's wrestling was quote the toilet break match, like she tried to break that mold, and more oftentimes than not would be exceedingly good at that.
yeah, and yeah, it
Yeah,
was
because I
definitely a thing. And honestly, I loved it when she came back. I don't know if you remember now, a few years back when they did like Heath Slater versus the Legends.
Yes.
And he's like, I'm sick of all this, and they keep bringing all these old people that would all beat him except for he beat.
APA just beating the hell out of
Yeah,
Heath
and it was
Slater.
literally Lita's like, oh, and he's like, I don't know. She's like, I brought protection. Yeah, then Farouk and Bradshaw, which poor Ron Simmons, like they just bring him out to say damn now.
Yeah.
That's all he does.
Yeah, depending on who you ask, the first black world champion in professional wrestling, Ron Simmons.
It's he was, but in his prime he was great.
Yes.
It's so weird for me. Like I'll always like want to call JBL Bradshaw because, well, I mean obviously I had an affinity for him. It's my last name,
Yeah.
but they were just like two big dudes, and it
Yeah.
was fun having them come out with Lita. Because I was your party was like, oh, are the Hardys going to come out with her? But she had that stint like with Edge, I think, where
Yes.
and I think she's even like there's a weird storyline with Kane at one point.
Yeah. So that you've got Rated R Superstar Edge with the infamous live sex celebration, and then you have the even more problematic baby angle with Kane and Gene Schnitsky, where Schnitsky famously punted a baby on live television, and then said it's not my fault for something else I won't say.
Yeah,
But his whole catchphrase was "It's not my fault," and then he punted a baby. Wrestling is amazing.
it's amazing that the WWE has recovered.
The like UPN era wrestling needs to be studied by people who are much more intelligent than I.
It's the funny thing because like my son's almost 4 and he's starting to get into it a little bit. I'll let him watch some stuff, and admittedly now like watching WWE on TV, it's not too bad. But like,
Yeah.
except for like when The Rock was coming on cutting promos, I'm like, oh nope.
Well, we're gonna watch this on a delay. Dad's gonna watch it for 10 minutes, and then you can.
He's just dropping stuff. I mean, and the thing that makes me sad is like, well, I'm like, oh, it's like, but when it moves to Netflix, like, there's going to be more of that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
my son, I don't know. AEW, definitely not as friendly.
Just start him with like 2012 WWE, where it was like completely sanitized.
Just have him watch nothing but like early 2010s John Cena matches.
John Cena versus the Nexus, yeah.
What a wasted. Yeah, don't get me started.
But yeah, number 3, I'm taking Lita.
I like it. Say, I'll go a little.
I have to say some of the anecdotes I heard during that little bit were fascinating to me.
John's like, I
learning
have to go
so
back and study like the wrestling of the '90s. It's
I almost wanted to like text you like, here's some matches you should just watch so you can at least know what we're talking about.
I actually prefer to be in the dark and kind of explore these things later. I know a few of the like legendary dumb things, and then I hear more of them, and it's like, oh, so there was actually like a lot of competition here.
So now I have to think about building the promotion here. So you know, I've got a big heel that I can play with. I got Tommy Dreamer, but now I've got to build, and I got to get my guy here, and a guy who's still doing it to this day. But I think that I would turn him into kind of that tweener babyface kind of guy. But I'm gonna take prime or vintage, as some may say, St. Louis's own Randall Keith Orton, Randy Orton.
Yes. Vintage. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Which it's so good. Like even now, like the fact that the guy's still wrestling after like double fusion, like neck back surgery,
Yeah.
and like came back because like John, it is you look at this guy when he wrestles, like I mean his finisher, which is just maybe the greatest finisher of all time. Like in terms of it doesn't have to be set up. And it's not incredibly lame like Hulk Hogan's leg drop, which is one of the lamest things of all time. But and also destroyed his back. But it's essentially he jumps up, he grabs the guy by the head, and he lands like his butt is back, and
the RKO out of nowhere.
The RKO, I don't know. It's
a move he did so good. He stole it out from Diamond Dallas Page. Like Randy Orton is not the first person to do that move, but he did it so well that we just forget that other people did it
Diamond
first.
Cutter existed. And if you want to see in my opinion, the greatest RKO of all time, WrestleMania versus Seth Rollins.
Yes.
Seth goes up for a curb stomp, which is what it sounds like. He jumps up high in the air, flies up, and he catches him. And if you hear the stories about him and Seth talking about it, they tried it in practice like 10 times. He didn't hit it any time, and he hits it perfectly during the match. And it's and he forgets to pin Seth because he's so excited that he hit it. And Seth's just like, I gotta just lay there, take it.
You can see him losing his mind, like, I hit it. Like, I'm in a match still.
And he's like, oh yeah, I gotta cover. And, like, and it's like, and I'll use this, give a shout out to like the referees in WWE. They're like, they have to do so much at once because they've got earpieces where they're telling them what to do. They're checking on the safety of the wrestlers. They have to remember how the match is supposed to go. But then if there's changes, if a wrestler gets hurt in match, it's fascinating if you want to hear like what some of these guys have gone through in matches and stuff. But I mean, I
will throw in one of my favorite RKOs. I got to see live, and it was the first time it happened, I'm pretty sure. But AJ Styles going for the phenomenal forearm into the RKO. That happened in Indianapolis. I got to be ringside for that one. But like anytime an RKO happens, no matter what the setup, you just pop because it's so fun.
Yeah, I mean it's there's nothing better than a guy like going up in the air or like trying to hit his finisher and then like just boom. It's the out of nowhere aspect that makes it. And now it's just built up such a lore that anytime
it's a meme, but it's that way for a reason because it is that good.
Well, I mean, to the point where he's like that's what he started doing his merch, and he'd like walk out in a shirt and then he like start pointing where it says out of nowhere, and just like, I mean, because I don't know, I mean the first one out of nowhere, like the big one's probably the Evan Bourne.
Yep.
The shooting star press is that what they're called? It's called.
Yeah.
Essentially, John, just think a guy jumping off, flipping in the air off the top of the rope, and then like guy catches him and puts him down like as he's jumping from a height.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, as you were discussing the RKO, I very much like looked up what it was. I know the move now that I see like pictures of it, but definitely did not know what the name of it was. So
there was that like the viral meme a couple years ago where students would run around on different campuses RKOing other students and then just filming it. Like it's one of those few wrestling things that breaks into the mainstream into such a fun way.
Yeah, and it's if I remember right, there was like in that trend, like there's a video of, like Randy Orton, like his kids, they're like poolside, and then he just like comes out and like RKO's his own child into a pool.
Yes.
It's fantastic. And he's a guy that, we talk about these guys who maybe one way or another, like when he started out, I think he was a little rough when he was younger. He's a kid from the business. His dad, obviously Cowboy Bob Orton, big wrestler back in the day kind of a thing.
Also has problematic tendencies.
Yeah, also has problematic tendencies. But I think he's a guy that now he's gotten older. He's a little more stabilized. He's, and I mean, he's one title away from tying Flair and Cena.
Yeah, he's 14 or 15. Yeah,
he's at 15. I think the record's 16. I think he's gotta get it at some point.
Yeah,
I think, but he's a guy that, and when I say that tweener, he's played the baby face in some. He's played a great heel. And now it's funny, like I love this run he's on with Kevin Owens right now. Like I think they're fantastic together.
Yeah.
In terms of just the storytelling, and he's just basically like sick of, I don't know, kind of bullies or just like arrogant, like him hating Logan Paul is just one of the funniest things. Like even as recently a few years back when he came back and went at Rio and she was doing the mommy thing and he's like daddy's home kind of thing. It's like
yeah,
just so good. Like, and he's been that way for I mean, when did he break in? 03, 04? Like he's probably been doing this in the WWE for 20 years.
Yeah.
He started out in Ohio with like Cena and stuff.
Yeah, he was in that big OVO class.
Yeah.
Or OVW, not OVO. That's a different thing.
I was
gonna say I recognize OVO, but that's just
nope.
not a wrestling thing at all.
There.
Okay.
Yeah, OVW, gotcha. Ohio Valley Wrestling.
The big independents that it's almost like a minor leagues that the promotions will pull from. I forget. There's one down in the south too that's pretty big. But
yeah.
There's, that's where they kind of go. But yeah, Orton's just a guy who, I don't know. I just love him, and I have to give him a shout out too because he's from St. Louis, and I always get it. Like I'm a loser who still gets really excited when his intro and they're like, "From St. Louis, Missouri." I'm like, yeah. Just warms my little cold heart. So. JackJohn, I'll pass it back to you for your next pick.
Okay. I think for this one, I'm gonna go with. Okay, I've got to take this person because I feel like this person's on your list, and as each passing round goes, I'm afraid they're gonna get taken. Probably who was my favorite wrestler when I was a little kid. Again, somebody you could play as a heel or a face, and just infectious charisma. One of the most beautiful looking finishers off of the top rope, and just a really fun entrance. I want to take Eddie Guerrero. The 5-star frog splash, the Three Amigos, coming in on a lowrider, hearing Viva la Raza as like the music hits. Like Eddie was such a good professional wrestler. Like he had the look. He's a little bit of a smaller guy, but like still like everything as a kid. I just loved Eddie. His ability to like be a like chicken shit heel, but you still love him when he's cheating is just so good. His gimmick where he would like have a chair, the other wrestler would steal it from him. And then Eddie would just like fall flat on his back and then make the ref think that he got hit with the steel chair. It was like 10 out of 10, like Bugs Bunny nonsense.
So good. Like he was kind of the first that I remember of the heel that you were like, oh no, I'm going for this guy.
Yeah.
Because he was just like you said, he just spewed charisma. Like I found myself as a kid, despite loving Rey Mysterio. In the fight for Dominic, I'm like, no, that's Eddie's which is the most ridiculous storyline of all time, perhaps.
2005 SummerSlam, the custody of Dominic Mysterio on a ladder match.
Okay. I know about this one. Yeah.
And the funny thing is it still plays into like today because like Dominic very much kind of will try to do his mocking thing, which I mean to be fair, like for a guy who even like 2 years ago was like terrible in the ring. Like he's so good as a heel. Just I mean, when he clotheslined his dad and knocked out Edge and joined Judgment Day, it's like I'm like, okay, I'm in on this kid.
Yeah.
But like before that, when he was like with his dad, I'm like,
Yeah.
don't do 619s anymore. They're not good, Dom.
Yeah. You're not small and quick enough to make it look like a fluid motion.
Yeah, it's weird, and it's. I like that he's like, okay, you take him this way because he can't be his dad, who a man who I don't know somehow like still really really good in the ring and stuff.
Yeah. Rey Mysterio, who's been wrestling since he was like 12 and is now like 50.
Yeah, and like I mean, you ever want to hear a fun story, or if you ever just want to cry, listen to Rey Mysterio's Hall of Fame speech when he talks about his wife. Bring you tears every time. But which is the funny thing is his son walked out when he started his Hall of Fame speech, like all for the gimmick. I hate you, Dad. But I'm very much now in team like raise a deadbeat dad.
Yeah, I love the entire storyline of that. There was an interview like a couple days ago where they were talking to Dominic and they were like, like your dad, like big lucha, like family history and lineage, like he wore a mask. Why don't you wear a mask? And he's like, well, my dad was ugly and I'm not. So I don't need to wear a mask.
I mean that's the thing. Like that would be the hardest thing for me. Like the kayfabe, like how you literally have to keep that up in public when you're in WWE.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like you know that they don't because like Dominic just got married. Like his dad was there and stuff. And,
Right.
like that'll be like the fun thing one day is like when they both retire and they can like talk about it.
Yeah.
And retrospective look at it, like 80-year-old Ray and like 60-year-old Dominic, like talking about it.
Yeah.
But Eddie.
Eddie.
Before from Eddie Guerrero.
The original deadbeat dad to Dominic.
Yes.
Yeah, Eddie was just like he's so captivating. Like one of like the like original like I think he was one of the alleged SmackDown 6. Like if like the core of SmackDown in the early 2000s. Like such an incredibly gifted technical wrestler. His Halloween Havoc 97 or 99 match against Rey Mysterio still want to consider like one of the best matches of all time, just in terms of like how like beautifully done it is. Like he's such a gifted technical wrestler, and again like his charisma is what makes him so much like more of a superstar. Like larger than life personality. Again, like his character would be he's lying to your face and you know that he's in the wrong, but you still love him anyway because he's got just like that grin and that like amount of like charisma to pull it off.
Yeah, it's like you're like, you know what? It's sort of like in The Office when Dwight and Andy are having their feud and Andy he's like, oh, the Prius is silent if he keeps it under 5 miles an hour. He deserves the win. That's how you felt about how Eddie did stuff. And then that's what made No Way Out of 04 so amazing when he finally got the title.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, is it Brock? He defeated Brock.
He defeated Brock, yep.
Yeah. So it's like, that was like, holy cow, this is fantastic. And I mean, less than or just over a year later, he was a guy who I believe it was a heart attack.
Yep,
how he died.
His body got too big for his organs to keep up.
He and that was the thing of I'm not a corner, so I don't know if it was performance enhancing stuff, whatever, for just working out too much or however. But yeah, it was one of those like, but a guy who and he was like a family person, like Vicky, obviously, big part of the wrestling area. She was, I mean, even stated it after his death when she kind of went into the managing with the whole like Jack Swagger and those type of guys that she was taking on as clients and whatever. But like, a cool way, and a guy who's still, you'll see, Ray and other people like pay homage to with the three
the Three Amigos is still like anyone hits it, they're like, that's Eddie Guerrero's move.
Yeah, it's like, and they'll still like the announcers will say it, paying homage to Eddie.
Yeah.
Or, do the little shimmy and that Eddie would do. It's a guy who like I have no doubt like if he was still with us, like would still be involved in some way in the business.
Oh yeah. It's like he would only be like his early 50s by this point, I'm pretty sure, if he was still alive today.
He'd be around Ray's age. Like him and Ray were roughly the same age. So.
Eddie Guerrero wrestling today, it's so unfortunate that we don't get any of that.
Yeah, it's even it's like, and to be fair, all the people talk about skill on them too. This
Yeah.
guy, just he'd have people eating out of the palm of his hand. If he wanted you to boo, he could say the exact thing to make you boo.
Right.
He was like he's a guy that like I honestly was like I wish I had like I've gone back and watched his stuff more from his early
Yeah.
career, but like I wish I had been into wrestling a little earlier and
Yeah.
seen some of that. Because like honestly, the first thing I start to remember with him was like when he got in, but then like maybe him and Benoit working together was maybe like kind of the first thing that really kind of triggered. So it was a little bit like
Yeah.
coming into when he was starting to enter the title picture and stuff like that. But see, and I'm just gonna get sad and emotional thinking about Eddie now.
Yeah. That is a hard part about being a wrestling fan is like going back to any time between 85 and 2005. More often than not, it's going to be with, and sadly, they're not with us anymore.
I mean, literally a couple of nights ago, I watched the Iron Claw and just
Yeah. That's a hard watch.
Like, that's up there. Like, I don't want to compare it to Schindler's List, but like, it's that type of movie where like I could watch this once every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Knowing the story of the Von Erichs, you go in knowing this isn't going to go well for anybody.
And they leave out one son who unalived himself.
So I'm not familiar with. I'm aware that the movie exists. I've heard good things. I haven't seen it, and I'm not familiar with the Von Erichs. Would I need to like prepare myself by like reading up on it, or just go into it
ready
blind?
for tragedy? And
they're a historically good wrestling family with deep ties to the industry, which also means they have deep ties to a lot of like hardship, as many wrestlers did in that era.
But yeah, the fact that I'm still mad at A24 because, gosh, Efron should have been nominated. He's so good in it. Like, it's like, just prepare yourself. It's worth a watch, and then you probably never have to watch it again. Like,
because it's on Max, I think. Like, it's available to watch. I just haven't got.
Yeah, it's on Max now. Yeah, that's where I watched it. All right. I think it's finally time.
Ooh.
It's fine. We take a tag team.
Oh,
I haven't picked any women yet. But if I'm honest with myself, I have to go with my favorite tag team in my childhood. I believe they still have the most tag team titles of all time in WWE history. From ECW, I'll take Bubba Ray and Devon.
Yeah.
The W.
I heard you were taking a tag team. I thought you were taking the Whoop There It Is guys.
Tag team back again. Anyway. I mean, the Scoop There It Is guys. That was a great commercial a few years ago.
I miss it.
As a dad, I really appreciated that commercial. Like the kids being embarrassed by the dad. Anyway, the Dudleys, like, to be fair, like Bubba Ray, Bully Ray, before that, like a guy who, and I believe, was obviously as active as recently as this year's WrestleMania in the WWE, where he's the special guest referee for an otherwise match, like fun match where it was just like, hey, we're gonna do things, and then we did the 3D, which always makes us happy. I'm sad that Devon just physically can't do things anymore. He's still in rough shape. It's random if you ever watch Maven's YouTube channel. I guess him and Devon are like best friends, so he'll randomly call him, and he's just like, why the fuck are you calling me right now? Like, fantastic to watch. But like, and even Devon, like after the Dudley Boys were there, he was like Reverend Devon.
Yeah.
with
Deacon Batista.
Deacon Batista, like, so good. But like the Dudley Boys themselves, like the height of tag team like rivalry was the 3-way when you always had Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian.
Yes.
And that ladder match, that TLC match is one of the best matches of all time. But like everybody like who watched wrestling, like you were always pretending to 3D people. Like anytime you saw like just a standing table, you're like, I'm gonna 3D somebody through that table.
As a kid growing up in like the early 2000s, the best thing would be you're going over to somebody's house who has a pool, so you can do a 3D to somebody in the pool.
Yep. 100%. Or if you had a friend with a trampoline, you would like do them there. which I don't recommend doing that, kids.
Definitely don't do any wrestling moves. No, never.
Yeah, I mean, did me and my brother have his Showtime or his show choir cummerbund that was sparkly and blue as our pretend belt when we would fake wrestle while watching wrestling? Hard to say as kids growing up. Shout out to my brother. But
I definitely don't playfully slam my son down on the bed and yell spinebuster. Definitely doesn't happen.
my son asks me to choke slam him and then count. I have to resist doing it to my daughter at 7 months old. She's probably still a little young for me. Like, I'll do it. I've done it a couple times, like joking, like setting her down. But
yeah, the net control's there, and then it's full game.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, I mean, the Dudleys, like I said, I believe they still have the most tag team championships in history. And it was everywhere. These were guys that just their whole thing was we want to put you through tables. Like,
yeah,
that was their thing. And the way they got the crowd involved with the, Devon, and then the crowd just yells, "Get the tables!" And
yeah,
maybe the most time period thing, John, that they did was they had a move where a guy would be standing on the ground, spreading a dude's legs apart, Bubba Ray would, and then Devon would climb to the top rope, and he would head in, like jump and like put his head into his.
But more importantly, Devon would yell, "What's up?"
It was
Because,
literally.
gee, I wonder what era this was in.
And but like it was so good because it's just like, it's like that episode of The Office when Michael's still saying "What's up." You're like, oh, it makes you feel good. It's like an Office reference I've made here, but
yeah, I'm imagining that after he said "was up," he asked, "Is that your final answer?" Just forget all the like late '90s, early 2000s catchphrases.
Regis popping in to WWE. Like, I mean, Drew Carey was in a Rumble, so I guess it's not that weird. But
Bubba turns and goes, "You have been eliminated. Goodbye."
Oh man, that's a reference.
Man,
Loved that show.
good old, what was her name? Ann something, right?
Ann Robinson.
Yeah. What a treasure
See,
she
I know
was.
some things. They aren't wrestling, but I know some things.
But it was like they were just fun, and then like I said, the feuds, like they were like the bigger brooding, throw you up, push you through tables. You had the Hardys that were the high flyers, and then Edge and Christian who were just kind of in between. But like, it's a shame that they weren't necessarily part of some of the like huge like stuff. I mean, you had Bubba going through like multiple tables and stuff, but like obviously from that TLC match, everybody remembers Edge spearing Jeff Hardy from the top of like a 20-foot ladder,
Right.
which is insane. But like with just their size in general, they weren't gonna do the high flying movers as much. I mean, they took their fair share of bumps. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
right?
they were the brawlers of the trio.
Yeah. And it was, but they were just like they were so fun.
Yeah,
Like, as a kid, like they came out wearing this, kind of like the gray, white, black camo was kind of like what they would wear.
Yeah.
And it just, they played into the 3D thing. They had like the glasses they wore. They were just kind of like the black, like horn rim glasses kind of things that you'd have. And it was just, as a kid, there was like you were in, and there was no thing. You were either a Dudley's guy or you were a Hardy's guy. Like you couldn't be like, as I got older, I'm like, ah, man, like if I had been more punk, I would have been like, I get like liking Lita. I imagine that JackJohn was like a Hardy Boys guy.
Yeah.
And it's funny, my wife, who watched wrestling a little bit growing up, the one person she always told me that she loved was Jeff Hardy. I'm like, I look nothing like Jeff Hardy. So I guess that wasn't her.
I'm a little disappointed that you clarified that it was called the Hardy Boys, because I had a very stupid joke about the Hardys. We went to the West Coast and they were called the Carl's Juniors.
10 out of 10.
The level I'm working on. By the way, JackJohn, you're on a podcast that's much more pun accepting than your normal one, so feel free to let them loose.
It's funny because on Here's a Guy, it's usually like followed by like a sigh and the contemplative of walking away from the desk.
It only happens when I talk slander against Lily Gladstone, I think, on this podcast. So.
And I wasn't the one that walked away on that one, so
It was not. It was indeed our esteemed other One of the only other two guests besides JackJohn to appear on this podcast.
It's true. I'm not sure if Tyler's a wrestling guy. I could see him being a wrestling guy. I should check with him on that.
Yeah. Tyler, comment on this episode. Tell us if you're a wrestling guy or not.
Big way to tell if he's listening to our pod.
All right.
All right, JackJohn, you're up.
JackJohn, you're about to hit halfway.
For my next pick, I'm gonna pick. This is a person who I've probably watched the least amount of matches for two reasons. One, they don't have that many matches, and two, they're not they're a little bit newer. This is from a promotion that as much as I've watched of it, I loved. I haven't watched all of it, and I need to do another full deep dive of it. But we're going to Lucha Underground for my next pick.
Lucha.
I am going to take Matanza.
Okay.
Now, what I love about Matanza is a couple things. One, his look is just... When you think of, like, badass-looking wrestlers, Matanza, whose real name is Jeff Cobb, who still wrestles as Jeff Cobb, which is a lot less intimidating than Matanza.
And Jeff.
But Matanza has, like, this, like, killer boiler room Michael Myers look to him. Like, when he shows up, you know, shit's about to go down. His finisher is called the Wrath of the Gods. And, like, the entirety of Lucha Underground and its presentation is basically wrestling is real and so is dark magic. And, like, it's, like, this really, really cool, like, experience and environment that you can watch it in. And I know for a long time Lucha Underground was on Netflix. I don't think it is anymore, but that's how I originally watched it.
Mm-hmm.
But Matanza, he just has, like, this, like, horror killer look to him. And, like, when he comes out, you know someone's about to just get either murdered or, like, sent to the Shadow Realm, basically. Like, he just has such a cool look. And Jeff Cobb is, like, a great, like, technical wrestler. Like, I think he has, like, an actual, like, collegiate wrestling background. But there's just something about Matanza just, like, beating the hell out of people that I love. And every match that I've watched of his, it's so cool. I'm a big looks guy. And even though he's only, like, I say only, sorry for anyone listening who's not, but he's only 5'11". Yeah. But, like, he feels so much bigger and so much more intimidating.
His body style compared to most of the people in Lucha Underground, he's just...
Yeah.
You know, like, it's almost like he's, in essence, is his size. It's like seeing the Big Show, like, show up to the time. You're like, oh my gosh.
He looks like a whiskey barrel of a person.
Yeah. It's... I always say that he is, like, his inspiration to me is very much like Mankind. If Mankind was, like, truly psychotic and not just like, oh, that guy's got his screws loose.
Yeah. If Mankind was like an Aztec killer.
Yeah. And it's, you know, and he's a guy, he's, you know, his whole kind of like career, he's like a guy, he's like, he was in Lucha Underground, but like he was wrestling like 3 or 4 promos at the same time. Like, Lucha Underground, because I think he was doing like Gorilla at that time, or PWG. Yeah. He was doing, you know, I mean, because he eventually then I think went back to New Japan.
I think he's still in Japan, but like he's a good wrestler as Jeff Cobb, but to me he peaked with Matanza because there's just something about that like silent killer that he just works so well in that environment.
Yeah, I will say the one that never worked for me was like the Mr. Athletic kind of thing that they tried to do with him. Like he works much better in just kind of that being mysterious, if you will. Because it's the eyes. Like he has those eyes where when you see him, obviously, like his Matanza, if I remember right, he's wearing a mask a lot of the time.
Yeah, and his mask, it just looks so damn cool.
Yeah, it's like it's what they should have done with Kane's redefined mask, but they
didn't. Yeah. It's redesigned Kane, but like a 1.5 feet shorter.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it looks like it should be in like a Mortal Kombat game, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, either like Smoke or one of those characters.
In the best kind of way, he looks like a creator wrestler. Like he's the wrestler that I would have made at age 12.
Yeah, he's he's the guy that like you're like, oh, he's in a horror movie about where the killer is this, and it's a post-apocalyptic. Like,
Yeah.
you
He
can put him in Mad Max, like you can put him in Fury Road, and be like, kind of
yeah.
fits.
You're running away, he's walking, but he's still keeping pace with you.
Yeah, you're just like, how's this little man doing this? How are you so little but so big? Oh, that's a good one.
So looking at pictures of him, I love I love the name Matanza, by the way. The idea of this guy wrestling under the name Jeff Cobb is just very funny to me.
And again, like Jeff Cobb, a very, very good, acclaimed wrestler of his own. But to me, it's a step shorter than what his Lucha Underground persona was.
It's
Like Jeff Cobb sounds like he's the name of like a patent attorney or something. It does not sound like the name of this like massive wrestler. But I guess he makes it work. I'm not going to be the one to make fun of his name to his
station
face.
down on Route 6, you know. Like, he sounds like he could be in any like little country town.
Yeah. Jeff Cobb has a farm, and he's doing very well for himself.
Yeah, I mean it's. Oh man. Say, John, you have any other thoughts on Jeff Cobb?
I think that's it. Like his look alone is what put him on my list. And I love his ability. He's a great wrestler, but I'm a looks guy, and that look is 10 out of 10.
Yeah, he's definitely like. I'm with you on that for sure. All right. I guess I need to get a lady in this sausage fest that I've got so far. Because the ladies are a lot better than, they were like we were talking in the Lita era.
Yeah.
Man, this one's tough. I could go a few different ways. But like it's hard for me to really do this in some ways, but because this person is so young and current. But I'm gonna take Rhea Ripley.
Yes. That was on my list.
She is like, and it's one of those things. Like I have other women on here. We'll probably get to at least another one here, but the fact that she got hurt and had to vacate her title. I mean, her title reign was so good. Her match with Charlotte to win the title was fantastic at WrestleMania 39.
Yeah.
But like, for being in her mid-20s, she's so polished in the ring and so good on the mic.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny, like, she has a look that, like, if I'm watching stuff, like, and my wife sees her, my wife's like, oh, I like her. Like, immediately you're just drawn to her.
I've seen things online where, like, her look has, like, broken through into the mainstream where it's like, wait, this is what wrestling is now? Hold on, you have my attention.
And it's really cool because if you see kind of her progression through NXT, like, at one point, she was doing the blonde hair thing and just kind of like the fit, kind of every girl kind of thing, almost like an all-American girl, even though she's Australian.
Yeah.
But then she's like, screw this, I want to be myself. So she's got the hardcore kind of metal goth look, black hair, she's tattoos everywhere. And it's like, which first of all, you look at it, you're like, and she's tall too, like she's not small. She's believable. And like, I don't mean this in a bad way, but when you get some of these people, like honestly, like the Liv Morgan Revenge Tour, Liv Morgan is too small for me to believe that she can really beat some of these people. Like,
yeah.
And I get it that you have to have some suspended disbelief because otherwise, like the Big Show would be, Braun Strowman would never lose a match.
45-time champion, the Big Show.
Yeah, which I love Paul as much as the next guy, but
wait, are you trying to tell me that David Arquette isn't organically capable of winning a championship in a combat sport? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
It depends if you're ready to rumble or not, John. But
yeah, I get that reference.
Like, yeah, it's a movie title. But anyway, I don't know. Like, Rhea was one. Like, when I got back into it, like she's just, mouthpiece of the Judgment Day. The whole her and Dominic thing is just, it's so good because it's like, even you're like, why is Dom still around in this group? Like, he's not that great. And then it's like, mommy says so. Like, I mean, the funny thing is too, in like this more PG area, like she loves to put in like her slogan, John, is "Mommy's always on top." It's
She
sort of
has she has a very provocative pin.
she does. It's and it's so funny because like I imagine like you think in our day of like if there were DMs back in the 90s, like
Oh God.
you would have had, but the women in wrestling that like it would have been the Trish Stratuses.
Yeah.
You know.
Tori
I mean,
Wilson's DMs are not a place to go if you have a family.
no, Tori Wilsons are very much not. And it's like I remember doing all these things, but now it's so funny because like I mean, don't get me wrong, like a lot of like I made fun of Liv earlier for being small, but boy, there is a very vocal lonely man fan base that loves themselves some Liv Morgan online. But like Rhea is just like everybody, like she's supposed to be a heel, but she's kind of like Eddie in that like everybody roots for her.
Yeah.
You want Rhea to win because she's just so dang likable and charismatic in how she goes about it. And I think maybe even some of the other story, like coming through and just being like, "No, I'm gonna be me," kind of thing, has helped her in some of that. But it's like just a girl, kind of from Australia who's like, yeah, I didn't, she knew she wanted to do it, but then, and I think she's engaged to another wrestler, like that's
Buddy
the thing
Murphy,
about,
yeah.
yeah, like a lot of these people are, and it makes sense, are married to in relationships with whatever, like other wrestlers, like I'll never forget when just like only a couple of years ago I learned that Brock Lesnar's married to Sable. I was like, oh, okay.
You're like, that weirdly makes sense, but I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, like I remember her. Well, I remember two things about her that anyway. Um, I'll let you
I
decide
have
what
a
those
guess.
are. But but it's it's funny when you like in this era more than we were knew back then. It's like with podcasts and just ability to access information, like getting into these wrestlers' personal lives a little bit. It's a thing that I find interesting. To like see like Undertaker's podcast that he's doing now, and like when he has Michelle on there talking, because like they never they never did like any storylines or anything like, oh yeah, that's the Undertaker's wife, like
Yeah. They did
where
a little bit when the invasion happened and DDP was stalking Michelle McCool, but then
yeah,
immediately afterwards it was dropped and never brought up again.
yeah, it's but whereas like with other people, it's like put very much into storylines and
Yeah.
or like I have a feeling that and you can see it too because like obviously like to me I don't know how you feel about the draft in WWE. I think it's stupid, but um it takes some of it out because like oh okay Charlotte's on this show or whatever, you're like okay well, or you're like she's hurt, Andrade gets drafted, you're like okay well I know where Charlotte's gonna be
Yeah.
because they're not gonna split her up from her husband or
It's not a true draft in the sense where like I'm expecting big things to happen.
yeah it's. And I mean, I really think they should start being able to draft superstars from the main roster to NXT. I think that would help it a lot too. But it's if
I
you're not
appreciate that
watching
we're now
NXT,
discussing drafts.
You know how this could get better? Let's add another draft.
yeah, we're now going to do a draft of WWE draft picks,
Ooh.
like the year that
I think
John
that
Cena got taken first overall and then was immediately taken back at second overall
Yes.
because that was the era we were in. It's
the next time the NFL draft comes up, we got to do another draft day, and redraft the draft from the movie Draft Day.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately, there's only like 3 players whose names we ever learn, but
I mean, if we're doing even though he's not in the draft from draft day, like I'm going to take. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on my boy's name.
you have to be a lot more specific than that.
Not even a player in the movie. Oh my gosh, this is how much I want to block that movie out of my mind.
What player are you thinking of?
It's not a player. It's the temp. Rick.
Rick?
Rick at the
Yeah,
end.
okay.
Like I would just draft Rick every single draft pick because
Okay.
he's the only person in that movie worth drafting.
The only even remotely likable character in the movie.
Rick, and then I'll take Ellen Purston just because she's Ellen Burstyn. Maybe Terry Crews. Like, I could do some like
Sure.
peck dancing or something. But all right, we've officially made it halfway through this draft.
I'll go quick with my next pick.
Right. Well, I'll try to make things quicker, but
John, you're gonna be very familiar with this next pick for me. I'm gonna pick a man, but only his 1999, because his 1999 is the stuff of legend. I'm taking the Big Boss Man in 1999 because, in order, the Big Boss Man in 1999 had his Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania with The Undertaker, where he was hung. He made Al Snow eat the dog Pepper. He had the Kennel from Hell match, and he crashed the Big Show's dad's funeral and drove off with the casket. All in one calendar year, the Big Boss Man had the best year of all time.
that is such a good pick.
Yeah.
Shout out to Alex from Here's a Guy who covered Will Traeger in 1999.
I was gonna say I remember that being covered. I couldn't remember who did it.
Yeah, Alex covered that.
I was gonna say that my favorite wrestling topic that you ever did was probably Herb Abrams, who's not a wrestler but is a insane promoter.
If we were gonna do GMs and like heads of our promotion, I would have taken Herb.
Sure.
Yeah, the Big Boss Man is just like he encapsulates what I love about professional wrestling in that it's just nonsense, trash soap opera nonsense. And his 1999 perfectly, like at the height of the Attitude Era, in its most like reality TV is king and we're gonna steal from it. Like, he was killed, he made a man eat a dog, he wrestled in the worst Hell in a Cell match of all time, and also he stole a casket with a person's dead father while that person was riding the casket. Like, if I'm building a promotion, I want the insanity that the Big Boss Man brings.
The Big Boss Man's energy and how he dresses. It's like, oh, this guy was just like a doomsday prepper who like was like, I'm going to just load up with everything that I can.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, I'm just insane on top of it.
Also, the story of his character, like he was a corrections officer from Cobb County, Georgia.
Yeah.
And his first big rival was a man by the name of Nails, who by all accounts was wronged and like actually like beaten and tortured by the Big Boss Man. But the Big Boss Man was the face because he was the cop.
He's the cop.
Nails was absolutely a sympathetic babyface, but he was a heel because he was a convict.
So,
yeah.
If that storyline was done today.
This is a whole other subject. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but the politics of professional wrestling are fascinating.
Yes.
Because there are two of the most extreme wings that there are, and like nothing in the middle.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm taking the Big Boss Man for the insanity that was 1990.
Well, my next pick. You want to talk about ridiculous soap opera drama? There was a period of time in professional wrestling and WWE in particular where there was, if we weren't really sure we were going the storyline and we needed to have somebody, it was this man. He has appeared at 6 WrestleManias. He's undefeated in them, but he's actually not competed in any matches. I am taking the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Dylan Postal, a.k.a. Hornswoggle.
I knew it. when you said when you need shenanigans, you insert him, I was like, is this Hornswoggle? Yes.
It's because of the absurdity. Oh, Vince McMahon's illegitimate son. It's Hornswoggle.
Mm-hmm.
The mysterious Raw general manager. It was Hornswoggle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we randomly just need this guy who's running around with Finley, who is an Irish guy. So he just dressed him as a leprechaun most of the time.
We wrote a joke, but we don't know what the punchline is. Quick, we have to pay it off now. Give me Hornswoggle.
Yeah, and it was funny. Like, I'd had him lower my list, and maybe this is complete recency bias. The day we were recording this, Chris Van Vliet just posted an interview with him today.
Oh, I need to watch that.
And Dylan Postle's just fantastic. Like, he's a guy who, like, along the lines, like, if you're familiar with the comedian Brad Williams, who's also, for anyone who doesn't know, he's a little person.
Yes.
But just makes fun of it and makes all the greatest light of it, like everything he does. And like, I mean, honestly, another great spot he did was, I forget, it was either the 2019 or 2020 Women's Royal Rumble, where Zelina Vega, I think it was like hiding under the ring so she could not go in and get eliminated.
Yeah.
Well, next thing you know, like Hornswoggle just like pops out, and then
Which,
which there was a storyline going on with that, of him like being obsessed with her or whatever it was. And
that, and I'm pretty sure in kayfabe, his home is under the ring.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure that was a storyline where like he lives under the like that's just a thing that happens.
And it's
he's just like a troll.
A little.
So, depending on the era of Hornswoggle, they made him a full-on cartoon character. There was a storyline where he literally ran through a drawn-on hole in a wall, and it worked. And then another wrestler tried to do it, and then ran into the wall.
Like, it's very much
like
Road
literally a Looney Tunes bit.
They made him Bugs Bunny a couple times.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time, like, the dude can take a bump.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? WrestleMania was 23.
I think there were a lot of wrestlers, especially in the 70s and 80s, that were very good at taking bumps. If I know my
Speaking of
history.
Von Erichs.
Yeah, say. The Iron Claw, now on Max. But like when he took the finisher from Kennedy off the ladder at WrestleMania.
Yeah. Which show was it where JBL just pelted a trash can at him?
Oh my god.
That's what I thought you were going to talk about. From the ring, JBL takes a trash can and just full on yeets it. And it just hits Hornswoggle and he collapses because he just got hit with a trash can.
It's so good. And it's like, it's funny. It's like, oh, it's a cheap gimmick or whatever. But like, you get the feeling like he was in on the gimmick. So like, it wasn't like, because there were a few other times that they brought, obviously smaller wrestlers in. I mean, but not necessarily as sustained. Like, I think of when they had like the mini Booker T with The Rock, where he just kept saying "sucka" over and over.
Yeah,
that was the gimmick.
Like, there were other wrestlers like El Torito. El
Torito in that Rumble he's in is fantastic. Like, when he's like jumping on the Hurricanrana people off the ropes and stuff. Like, like they're good, and but nobody ever hit the level that Hornswoggle did. And like I said, there's probably some recency bias, but at the same time, it's like you got to have that guy that can just be a fun gimmick. Because I think if wrestling's too serious, that's why I'm just kind of like, okay, like, because wrestlers aren't that good of actors, so if they try to get too serious, that's when it gets campy, like you were talking about at the beginning. I think where we're, I think something like, with, like, we had this huge storyline that obviously ended at WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes and The Rock and stuff. It's like, even some of those, I'm like, this is partially good promos, but at the same time, I'm just like,
you need your levity. You can't be at a 10 all the time. You need to come down, have a laugh, and then you can go back up and appreciate those 10s even more.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, like, I won't lie, the levity, my favorite levity in wrestling today right now, and she's not on my list even though I love her, Chelsea Green is fantastic.
Yes.
I love everything with Chelsea Green. And bring her husband back to the WWE, please. Vince is gone. He can actually stay down. Fine. But, I mean, she's like doing the old school thing that was done when wrestling wasn't good with women, like in the perfect way with a bunch of women who are good at wrestling. She's like, no, I'm the best. And it's so good. Like, I'm gonna send you matches to watch, John.
Yeah.
And you can just I feel like we have to do like an update at some point, like hearing you be like, okay, I watched a couple of wrestling matches, and I still hate this, but
I sat through all
I
of
have-
Kenny Omega versus Okada at Dominion, and I still don't like wrestling.
yeah, it's like that's like saying, oh
I-
yeah, I watched Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, or I watched Steamboat Savage. It was like, yeah, it's fine. But
I have to say the last round of picks of Big Boss Man and Hornswoggle starting to lure me in a little bit. This is really speaking my language right now.
all right,
Hey, Jack John, you're up.
also to you, Jack John.
All right. I'm going to take my second woman, and someone who is from a different era, even before Lita, but someone who didn't get her flowers until much later, despite being at the time the best in her expertise. I'm taking Bull Nakano.
Bull.
Somebody who again is like, I was primarily drawn to her when I first found out about her based on her look. Again, a little bit even before my time, but like a standout in all Japan women's wrestling, a fixture of the women's division in the WWF before there really was such a thing. But we talk about like a strong style person who could just beat the hell out of you, and it's believable because it's really happening. Bull Nakano adds that like fear and intensity that wrestling like sometimes just doesn't have at all. Like she has just like such an amazing look, such an amazing like ability to just be a fantastic wrestler. And just imagining Bull Nakano versus Lita just makes me fucking happy.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously people agree with you as she was obviously inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame this year.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, her look and her gimmick, like, I think you could put her in the WWE today and it still works.
Yeah.
It probably works better now, but it would just be like, oh, okay, that's somebody's gimmick versus like, whoa, this is crazy.
Like if you look at like Asuka today, it's very much like a prototype of what Asuka is.
Yeah.
Asuka was somebody who was on my short list, and I was like, I think I got to go with not the original, but like somebody who the WWE had first.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely like you can tell that. I think Asuka definitely draws inspiration, whether between the colored hair, the face paint,
Yeah.
and even like the style of the face paint, which is kind of where both was maybe more just kind of like fractured lines on the face, kind of thing. But a woman definitely like who is just, I think, technically just way ahead of everybody.
Yes, way ahead of her time. Her active years were 83 to 97. Like, had she like swung like even a couple years later, she would have had a much different career. Like, look out.
You just imagine like if her and Lita, like was not built, if they could have had a match,
yes,
it'd be incredible.
Yeah.
Because it'd be, the kind of the brooding force, strong style versus the high flying, quick, athleticism. And man, I'd pay to watch that match. Like, somebody make it in like 2K, 24, because from what I understand, that's pretty terrible. But she's a great pick. Like, somebody who like that I didn't get to see a lot, and like from what I've watched of her is fantastic.
Yes,
but I think honestly, like we probably suffer in some ways because she didn't get to go against the competition that maybe even elevated her to that level.
Yeah. Her Japanese stint is probably like what made her stand out more. And I need to delve deeper into that, but like even like I said, like her presentation in the WWF was still amazing. It's just unfortunate she didn't get to showcase why she was there.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. So John's quiet on that one, so
No, I'm just learning, just absorbing the information.
boy, there's so many ways to go here.
I will say just generally one thing I enjoy about this is that most of our drafts that we do that are about like non-scripted professional sports, we're just like looking at a lot of like advanced stats and stuff. We're just like talking about like player war and stuff like that. And it really is fun that it's just a draft where it's just purely about vibes and it's about like energy, which is correct because it's not like
wrestling is it's scripted entertainment, but it's also real. Like the people are really doing these things. It's a real spectacle to watch. And then you get some terrible cheesy drama. Like, like none of the writing that happens on a wrestling show is going to win awards or stand up to like, oh, that
Yeah.
writing. It's like, no,
Unless it's a Razzie.
yeah, it's but at the same time, it's like when you see somebody like if you're not a wrestling fan and we're like, you got to watch this promo this guy cut, it's great. You're not going to think it's good because you're just like, okay, that was.
Yeah.
But it's something you just like as you do it, you have to kind of like, I don't know. It's almost like watching, like, I don't watch a ton of anime, but when you watch anime, you have to suspend disbelief to understand that it's the world that it's operating in. Like you were talking about, even with like Lucha Underground, like you have to understand like black magic is real and these are real people. Whereas like the WWE, it's real. And I think they're starting to do smarter things in terms of like bringing in things that happen outside, like whether it was like, like Drew McIntyre's reinvention of himself with basically the way he's just taking his social media after CM Punk got injured and stuff. It's fantastic. But like, if you were somebody who didn't understand what's going on, you'd be like, that's not that good. It's just a guy that's got an accent being a dick.
Yeah, I am still reeling from the comment that wrestlers aren't good actors. That's still just really.
I mean,
really, I'm trying to think of who the best acting wrestler is, because like obviously like Dwayne Johnson's really famous, but I don't think anyone's like thinking he's an amazing actor.
If you're staying in wrestling, it's probably Roddy Piper. I mean, depending on what you think of Roddy Piper's actual acting career, but like in terms of probably actor who was best at being a wrestler, it's probably Piper.
I was kind of thinking like who like parlayed like being a wrestler into being like a good actor or at least a competent actor. Because I was thinking like whenever I've seen like Dave Bautista in like movies and stuff, he's pretty good, yeah.
Like
and like obviously like Andre the Giant was in like Princess Bride and stuff, but it's not like he's thought of as being like a thespian. He's just like a big guy.
Yeah.
He was big softy and as Fezzik, but it's that's a hard question because like Hulk Hogan's terrible and
yeah,
like The Rock.
Other than like I know he's in like Rocky movies, but what else does Hulk Hogan even act in? I'm blanking.
He had it was like a babysitting movie where he like essentially I can't remember what the exact name of it is. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, he was in oh shoot.
It's kind of basically like what the Nanny, yeah. It's like kind of like how The Rock did the Tooth Fairy, like that kind of era of like bad, campy, like 8-year-old to 12-year-old movie demographic.
He also had the great cameo stint in the worst movie in the Three Ninjas saga, Three Ninjas High Noon on Mega Mountain, when they go to the theme park, and like his best role is definitely Thunderlips in Rocky 3, like by far. But like it's funny, like if you ever want to look up like wrestlers who you didn't know were in movies, look up the Marine movie series.
Oh God.
And there's just so many wrestlers. Like Seth Rollins has been in those.
Well, that's when the WWE was trying to have their own film production company.
Yeah,
and they were just pumping out a bunch of movies.
Which I will say, I'll give Cena credit. He's getting there in terms of like
Cena's up there. That's
comedic acting. Like his comedic timing is really good.
Yeah.
As a person, I won't lie, he's still just kind of like. I feel like he's a little too like polished when he does public interviews and stuff. Like
he is a robot designed in a lab.
Yeah, it's.
But like he's definitely fun in like cameo roles and like kind of like almost like a Channing Tatum type of performance, where he's like him in like a Trainwreck, where he's just like.
I was gonna say that
a big dummy is like he's pretty good at it.
I'm a big fan of him in the most recent The Suicide Squad, the show Peacemaker. He's good in, I think, in terms of. You see this like James Gunn, I think, works well with some of these guys from the wrestling background. Obviously, he gave Batista kind of his first crack with the Guardians movies, and like I really liked, like honestly, like if I'm being honest, Batista may be my top one now because like seeing the movie, I really liked the movie. I was going Knock at the Cabin that he was in, where he played a very different kind of like somber type of role in a movie. Yeah. To be fair, I probably like that movie more than most because I really like the book it's based on, Cabin at the End of the World. Yeah. Real good story. I would read it. It's a pretty short read.
Batista's come a long way from being lineless goon in the Spectre movie.
Right, like from being guy who drops bad joke one-liners without charisma to like, and he takes it seriously too. If you listen to him in interviews, like he has no plans to like be one of these guys that returns back to wrestling. No, I'm an actor now. Like I really want to pursue this. Like Dwayne Johnson is one of those guys to me. Like he's a movie star. I don't know how much of an actor he is. He's a great pull. Like I think he does good things. Like I love the Jumanji movies he's in. I think those are fun.
Yeah.
Moana, like in voice work, he's good.
Yeah.
But as an action star, yeah.
From what I've seen from the Fast and the Furious franchise, like you can't take that as acting, but it's fun popcorn watching bullshit.
Yeah, I mean it's
Well, he just like gets by on charisma for sure.
Yeah.
Like if someday Dave Bautista got like nominated for like best supporting actor at the Oscars, like I'm not betting on it, but it wouldn't like astonish me if Dwayne Johnson gets nominated for Tooth Fairy 3, More Tooth, More Fairy, or whatever. Probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see Dwayne Johnson like getting like a script that's like deeply personal and where, kind of maybe going back to like his like Polynesian type roots or something like that like he could really tap into something. But I think where he's at in his career, like that's gonna have to come later when he's slowed down. The guy just goes all the time.
Yeah.
And it's honestly insane when you think about it, but it's I guess he's laughing all the way to the bank, and then because now he's on the board of TKO, who owns the WWE now. And frankly, like, and he may come up, I don't know, one of these last picks, but like the latest stint he did.
Yes, the final boss Rock character, fantastic for him.
Great. He was like, I was surprised when in his 2 appearances at Mania, especially the first match that he was involved in, like, dude was selling and taking bumps for people. Like, he's getting thrown onto tables and stuff still. And it's like, because I thought for sure he's gonna be like, because this is a guy who has contract clauses that like I can't get punched in the face this many times because I have to look strong.
Yeah, the last time he was in a wrestling match, it completely screwed up like 3 movie productions to the point where they were like, okay, you can't do that anymore. Like, he definitely went above and beyond his most recent time.
Yeah, and he's like, I'll be back. Like, obviously we're setting up for a Cody Rock showdown. And I think Rock's gonna win the belt off him. I really do. I think Rock's gonna be the one to take the belt off him. But this looks nice on me. It's like, all right, like we get it, Rock. But yeah, that's a nice little interjection, and I should have like been actually planning my next pick instead of just like, having a conversation. But you know what? Just because I think this would be a hilarious tag team pairing if I ever wanted to do it with Hornswoggle. I can go one of 2 ways here.
Oh no!
With the classics, but I'm gonna go I'm gonna create the new amazing tag team of Hornswoggle and Yokozuna. Like, tell me you wouldn't watch that.
You have my attention.
I mean, and this is a guy who now we want to talk about like maybe his most iconic kind of thing is when he won the Rumble by tossing Randy Savage. He went for a pin, and from the pin down, he just tosses him over the ring.
Randy Savage having no idea how Rumbles.
Yeah, it was. But this is a dude who's like his whole persona is I'm big. I'm a sumo wrestler. But I mean, which to be fair, like he was, he was very big in he was in New Japan, right? Is Great Kokina, or if I remember that right? Anyway,
I think so.
He's because he's not like, people are like, oh, is he really like Japanese? No, like he's one of the NOI family.
Yeah,
like, he's part of the Samoan kind of family. It's funny they have him come out and he's got his like guy coming out waving the giant Japanese
Mr.
ball.
Fuji,
Mr. Fuji, who fantastic in the manager type. If we're talking managers, also like so good, but he's a guy who, like, I won't lie, like, in ring, not the most exciting.
Yeah.
But if you get the tag team of Hornswoggle, and just like imagine like Yokozuna, like making Hornswoggle into a projectile.
I was gonna say, I only picture him using Hornswoggle as a lawn dart, and it works.
Yeah, and it would just be so good because it's like, and they did that kind of with Hornswoggle where he would like, or when he did the bit with Cena where he hit like the mini AA kind of
Yeah.
thing. I forget who it was on, but they just something like, if I'm gonna build something and sell tickets, like let's sell some tickets.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the Dudleys versus Yokozuna and Hornswoggle, like you would watch that match.
Yokozuna, who's so much of a draw that allegedly during the first Saudi show that the WWE put on a couple years ago, the Saudi Prince requested Yokozuna be in attendance, despite the fact that Yokozuna had been dead for 10 years.
I mean, and another guy gone very, very soon.
Yeah.
34 when he died.
Oh God.
Which this was
younger than I am now.
Obviously, given his body type, he wasn't the healthiest individual. It says, at least according to Wikipedia, caused it as a pulmonary edema. So that would be, not necessarily something that you're expecting, but can have a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, he was such a draw in that time because when you had, he was coming a little bit after, when, because I don't think him and like Andre, because he was a little after Andre.
Yeah.
Because Andre was kind of the 80s with Hogan and everything. And then, but you needed kind of the new, just like unstoppable force kind of thing. And it was him. Like he came in, obviously won. What was it? It was one of the early Royal Rumbles he won.
Yeah, because it was WrestleMania 9 that Yokozuna fought Bret Hart, and then Hulk Hogan came out and ruined the end of WrestleMania 9.
I had to put him in every freaking WrestleMania and just
Gotta send him home happy, brother.
It's so funny because I mean it's like for all of Hogan's like faults and everything, like I wish I could have been a kid in the 80s because like that dude was everything.
He was pro wrestling.
Yeah, he was. And it's because like I don't necessarily hold him in high regard because like no, don't get me wrong, like the epic like the Rock Hogan match at WrestleMania was like 10 out of but like that stare down and the crowd just going nuts while they stared at each other.
Yeah.
Like it was funny that they were kind of going for that, I think, at this year's WrestleMania, but that first night crowd was just dead.
Because it was like 45 degrees in an open air stadium.
Yeah, they did it in Philadelphia and
in April. Yeah.
It's like so like
were they doing
it
at like the Link or where was it at?
It was at the Link.
Okay.
And it's like like 45 degrees, people are freezing cold, and it's like it was awkward to watch it on TV. You're like, this match is great. Why are people not like popping? Because they were freezing cold. But apparently like it warmed up like a lot more the second night, and they were great the second night, but all I have to say, yes, give me Yokozuna versus
hell yeah
with Hornswoggle, just because I think that would be hilarious. And we're building a promotion, like you got to build off your other wrestlers when you bring people in.
Sounds a little bit like the twins, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito sort of
yes
dynamic.
Yes.
Out.
Making references to Ivan Reitman movies that are not Draft Day.
Also,
all right, JackJohn, you're up.
All right, for my next pick, I'm gonna take a wrestler who I've talked about it a lot. His look is amazing. He's charismatic. He is an incredible finisher. I'm gonna take Keith Lee. Keith Lee
this guy, how has he never been bigger than he is? Like in terms of what he can do.
Yeah, he's so gifted in being a large man who can lift you up tremendously easily, and also has an unbelievable amount of speed to him. His ability to talk is exceptional. I need a thesaurus to understand half the damn word he says. He speaks so flowery, and like it. But also, his finisher is called the Spirit Bomb, and it's just a massive power bomb. But he's also a huge anime nerd, and I love that about him.
Yeah.
He's so damn cool.
Yeah, like I don't understand like how he was never like a bigger thing.
Yeah, he was an NXT champion, but he should have been a damn Universal or World Champion on the main roster in WWE.
I think he was a product of he didn't fit the mold Vince liked maybe as much.
Yeah,
because like when you had him and Brock in the ring alone,
yeah,
Rumble, like, and that's some of the best work you got out of Brock in a long time because it's
Brock,
like a guy who can keep up with because Brock is also a freakish athlete.
Yeah,
Brock
Lesnar, who organically, unscripted, goes, "Oh, big boy," when he sees Keith Lee,
because he is a big boy, but like when you see this guy and you're like you see the moveset he has for a man his size, you're like this doesn't compute.
His matches in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and PWG, like if you watch some of his like old, like not underground, but like his like before he got big matches, like it's insane what he can do. And like he can't do it necessarily as much today as he's getting older, and I think he had like a health issue that kind of held him down for a while in WWE. But like at his peak, what he was doing, it's unhuman. He's just so talented. And again, his power bomb finisher, the Spirit Bomb, is just it's art. Him power bombing like people and just throwing them in the sky.
Yeah, it's like I remember for a long time, like I used to stand very staunch until I saw Keith Lee. I'm like, oh, like you'll never top like Kevin Nash's Jackknife powerbomb. Like I thought that was what a powerbomb was, and now I'm like, no, okay. And don't get me wrong, I also love like the Kevin Owens, the pop-up powerbomb. It's like twist on the powerbomb.
Yeah,
but
that the last ride, all of those are good, but there's just something about the height and the hang time, and the way Keith Lee does like the sit out. So cool. Also, the pounce
are cool. For sure.
Yeah, his pounce, which is literally just him running full speed and body checking somebody.
It's like imagine
I'm a fan of any wrestling move that's just that dumb. That's just that. Yeah.
But it literally, it's just him body checking somebody, and they'll go like 5 yards.
Yeah, it's so funny to think about too. I mean, now John, if you want to talk about ridiculous moves, this is off thing, but kind of goes back in the sense that he's in the same family as my last pick. Just look up the stink face from Rikishi if you want.
Yes,
the epitome of ridiculous moves, but like it's so good.
His finisher, putting his ass in your face
because he had a very large.
I'm taking.
Some people would sell it too. It's just fantastic.
Yeah,
I know that podcast listeners can't see my face, but
with my 8th pick, I'm taking Keith Lee.
Keith Lee, that's a very solid pick in terms of, like especially more current guys
and by my counts, that will be my last singles guy. I'll have 2 tag teams.
So you still have tag teams to go. So yeah, I'm still in kind of the one of each, I think, left in terms of the unofficial how we were setting things up. Although I did create a new tag team from 2 of my singles competitors, so
I like it.
Here. But next, I just have to take a guy like going back to just pure nostalgia, but also not taking away anything from just what he was in the ring or out of the ring as a professional athlete. A theme song that honestly to this day I put on any like pump up workout mixes that I have. And I'm going to take, but I'm going to do heel version. Give me Perk Angle.
Oh,
Kurt Angle.
Like Kurt Angle at his worst. Perk Angle.
Perk Angle. Like
I thought you said Perk Angle. I just wanted to clarify.
That was it's you can explain it probably better than me, JackJohn.
Unofficial nickname. Kurt Angle had a really, really bad painkiller addiction, which
Okay,
stunted
yeah,
his
I
career.
figured that was probably
And according to Kurt Angle, he was taking like handfuls of Percocets at a time, like a you should have died amount of Percocets at a time. He looked horrible. Like he like thinned out a gross amount, but also he was wrestling like at the best level of his life in TNA at the time. Like moonsaults off of steel cages type shit.
Yeah, it was, which is very much not his gimmick. If you know anything about Kurt Angle, he's a legitimate Olympic gold medalist in
Yeah.
the sport of wrestling, in freestyle wrestling. One on criteria, which is a weird thing if you're not familiar with wrestling and you watch the video of him winning his gold medal. Uh, I was a wrestler in high school, and I still follow like collegiate and international like actual wrestling as well as in addition to entertainment wrestling, if you will. Um, so this was a guy that I just thought was awesome. And when he came in, it's like he's like the all-American guy when he first broke into WWE. Walking out with his gold medals on and his gold medal and wrestling in legitimate singlets, like sort of in a way that like Chad Gable does today. Like,
Yes.
who, knows it. But which the funny thing was when I had to look up and learn, I was like, oh, I wonder Chad Gable's related to Dan Gable. I'm like, oh wait, that's probably what he's just like alluding to with his name. It's not his real name.
okay.
But
I was gonna ask because I know like 3 actual like Greco-Roman wrestlers, and that's one of them.
say, are the other two Cale Sanderson and oh gosh, the guy that beat Carellin, Rulon Gardner.
Rulon Gardner, of course, yeah. I knew
um,
I knew vaguely that he beat a Russian guy that was extremely famous,
who
but
hadn't
that's
lost in like
pretty much the
7 or 8
extent of it.
years or
Yeah.
something. It's crazy, but yeah. But no, Kurt Angle, like in ring, like yes, I make jokes a little bit with the Kurt Angle thing, but like in ring, like so good. Like
Yeah.
for a guy who just obviously was an athlete, a hilarious thing now, like part of his theme song. Like his theme song, it's nothing special, but it's just like it gets for whatever reason, it just gets me like
Yeah.
it gets the heart moving a little bit. It's fairly upbeat, but the best part is like it became part of his shtick. Is that people would start like there's parts where it's like da da, and the crowd originally was I believe it originally started from very going Angle, and then Edge made a joke about they were saying he's like they should say you suck, and then like it turned into things. So anytime his song played, the crowd would just start yelling you suck, and like instantly. So like it started out he would like hate it, and then like now they still do it, but it's like a badge of honor, and he smiles
Yeah.
and loves every second of it.
It's a very endearing thing that, like, in the original like party, he's like, "Oh no, no, no," but now it's just like, "Cool, they like me now."
Yeah, it would be weird if they didn't do it. I mean, it's kind
Yeah.
of like people chant John Cena sucks like a bunch
Yeah.
of stuff, but it's like it's Cena. Like, now to be fair, Cena much more polarizing maybe between like people are like I don't want the goody two shoes guy versus
Yeah.
like Angle
Yeah.
played both sides of it well, but Kurt Angle is a man that we can forever thank for still having the WWE because of the aforementioned Survivor Series. He was part of the alliance. And as JR famously yells at Paul Heyman, Kurt just screwed you guys. When I forget what was it, Stone Cold was about to, or he stunned The Rock or something, and then Kurt comes in and hits him with the belt, knocks out Stone Cold, and The Rock pins Stone Cold
Yeah.
to win for Team WWE
Yeah.
or WWF, whatever it was at the time. But
Kurt Angle, a part of one of my favorite matches, the King of the Ring 2001 match against Shane McMahon, which is a beautiful train wreck of just resilience and going through with the plan despite having a broken tailbone or several concussions.
yeah, it's I think for me, in terms of a best match with Angle, like I will say like his match when he teamed with Rousey against Stephanie and Triple H was fun.
Yes.
Um, probably probably Angle versus Michaels at WrestleMania 21.
Yep.
It's a
Yeah.
really good match. Um, and this is a guy who I loved Kurt Angle, and now that I've gotten older, it's like, but as a kid growing up, I hated everything about Shawn Michaels, which I think was kind of his point. Like, and
Yeah.
I obviously now have to love him because he's like the guy running NXT, and NXT is as good as it's ever been. But it's like, seeing that match, I was like, okay, this is, fun, and it's you know, I mean, Kurt Angle even because I think around that time, like I think on a random like SmackDown, like he had a really good match with, like Marty Jannetty, who wasn't very good,
Yeah.
and was only known because he was part of the Rockers Michaels.
Who is Marty Jannetty?
Yeah,
A very, very interesting person that we don't have time to discuss.
yeah, that might be an episode of your show. I don't know.
I might have to.
Like, but it's yeah. I mean, like you could go into like you could list like as far as in ring stuff goes. If you want to list like all the great matches, like Kurt Angle has a ton of them. He's just he got so good in the ring because he was one of the first guys to start bringing like actual technique. Like, you know, he would German suplex the guy 6 times in a row, and and you're like, oh wow, that like looks like it hurts because you know he was using real techniques. And it hasn't been till a little more recently we'll see guys doing that where you actually see like standing switches happening in the ring if a guy has you behind the waist.
We mentioned it earlier, but his finisher, the angle lock, another finisher I can count very, very distinctly. It's a move you did on your friends as a kid just to see if you could do it.
Yeah, and
just
maybe
pretend to break their ankle.
Yeah, it's funny because like to the point where like it's literally what Chad Gable uses. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like, and to be fair, like I always like I love submission finishers as opposed to like you know he had the angle slam, which frankly was like it was just a body slam finisher kind of thing. But like the ankle lock, like him, I loved Ken Shamrock, you know, who was a thing, and maybe it's why I love Gunther so much, like because he, you know, I mean, literally, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched Raw from a night ago, but literally advanced in the King of the Ring tournament by, you know, making Jey Uso pass out with a sleeper hold.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I love that old school thing where it's like a guy, if he can make you tap out, it just seems tougher.
Yeah.
Than like, not to say like an RKO, like we talked, some the pop's great, but like, it's like, oh, it's almost like a cheat code. You just got to hit that one move.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I made you quit. This is my specialty.
Yeah, and I mean, and maybe it was even in that time. Obviously, we had I quit matches where you literally like would just have guys beat the living hell out of each other to the other one, either like passed out or said I quit, or tapped out, kind of a thing, and it was wild times. But I do love me some Kurt Angle, and you know, a guy who, despite his troubles, seems to like is come out the other side of them. And that's a great meme of him, you know, with like the wide eyes, like in front of the garbage can kind of thing, that he's still relevant today. So, all right, 2 left.
All right,
left indeed.
With my penultimate pick for a tag team, I'm going to take 2 wrestlers that I've seen fight each other in person, but they work so good as a tag team. Today they're called the New Catch Republic, but when I first was introduced to them, they were British strong style. I'm taking Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate together.
Tyler Bate.
I was at NXT TakeOver Chicago when they had their one-on-one match. So damn good. They are just
it's up there.
Two young lads doing the good wrestling is the best way to describe them. Their comedic work. It's 2 British lads who are just really, really good at doing the wrestling.
Yeah, I mean,
are they having a laugh?
They're having a giggle.
I mean, Pete Dunne is like, and I'm getting more like Tyler Bates. Pete Dunne, obviously the bruiserweight, if you will.
Yeah.
As he's gone by in another life, if you will, but he like. Some of the moves they do, it's so funny, like the breaking the fingers.
Yes.
Such just like I have to say, like, I don't know exactly how they do the sell on it, but like it's so good when people sell this. Like it looks like if you're not looking really close, you're like, holy crap, this dude just broke their finger. Like, and you know, Tyler Bate, the you know, I forget what it's called, where he like he just spins around.
It's called the airplane spin, despite the fact that airplanes do not spin. It would be better called the helicopter spin, but that is an argument for another day.
Yeah. If your airplane is spinning, I would recommend praying to whatever deity you believe in.
Yeah, I mean it's but it's like it's funny because like every once in a while there's just like you need that like spinning move that we just like have like whether it was Cesaro,
Yes, the big
where
swing. Yeah,
like you just are like it's impressive that this guy
yeah,
can just like when he did it at WrestleMania and he just like spun the dude with a ladder. Like
yes.
he's on top of a ladder, holding the ladder, and just like doing the airplane spin for
Yeah.
like 30 seconds. It's like
Tyler Bate has a finisher called the Tyler Driver 91 or whatever it is, which is his finisher. But his true finisher is small lad picks up big thing for an impressive amount of time. Like his whole gimmick is he can squat 1,000,000,000 pounds and show you that. Like his quads are the size of truck tires. But
yeah, like
if I could recommend one thing that you could just see about Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne to really just fully understand them, it's one of my favorite matches. It's British Strong Style, which includes Trent Seven versus Angel Cruz, Be Cool, and Tyler Bate. It is a 3v3 match where Tyler Bate is on both teams from Over the Top Wrestling. It's on YouTube for free. It's 28 minutes. It's worth all 28 of your.
So he's like the all-time quarterback. He's just always there.
So his team challenges a couple of the people, and those people are like, but Tyler Bate doesn't realize that his team has made that challenge. So those other people go find another person who is Tyler Bate, and he agrees to it. So he plays man in the middle for both teams, and it's so good.
it's such a good like. I don't even want to call it a gimmick. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily gimmicky. It's like it's such a brilliant idea.
It's something I've never seen again in wrestling, and it works so amazing. Again, it's 28 minutes. It's free on YouTube. Go watch it. It's the reason why I love Tyler Bate, but so him with fun is just so good as well. But that's gonna be my first tag team.
I mean, it's a solid tag team. I think they're guys that if they want to stay in the tag team division will be champions for a long time. Get a lot of tag team championships. The problem is just going to be they're both so good individually. When you have that inevitable breakup to singles runs. So yeah, I agree. I'll be honest. I don't love the name New Catch Republic.
Yeah, I'm still gonna call him British Strong Style.
Yeah, like that's a way cooler. But all right, so I need a roughly.
I just want to point out that British Strong Style sounds like it should have been the original name of an IPA, but.
I mean, that's you should pitch that, John.
Went down to the pub and had a few pints of British Strong Style.
It's funny you say that because the beer that I had tonight is Czech style dark lager.
Czech style dark lager, interesting.
It's delicious.
All right, Jason, you are up.
I'm up.
Shout out to state of Indiana right now, as the Pacers appear to be massively blowing Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
It is the Pacers on the road. I don't know if anything else could have been expected.
Yeah, against a team that is like decidedly better than they are.
The team who lost one game and then the world is falling.
I think they lost 2 games, but yes.
Basketball is a sport. No, that's my thoughts on that subject.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was Jason Tatum that closed the deal for the Celtics. So, like, every annoying St. Louis and I follow on Twitter is going to be very excited about Jason Tatum because we all act like we're like boys with him.
At least that went to OT. I expected it to be like a 30-point loss, like they kept doing to the Knicks.
Yeah, they were up 3 with like 10 seconds left, which is not ideal.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they should just try to shoot 67% from the field every game.
Why don't they just score more points? It clearly helps them win.
When you shoot the ball, have it go in. I hear that's good. Oh, all right. You know, I just want to have a fun, like, established tag team, despite my fake one to go in. I'm gonna take the team of Hulk and Animal, if you will, and
Okay.
I'll take LOD, as I
Yes.
will forever call them. I'm not gonna call them the Road Warriors.
Yeah. No, it's
Legion.
Legion of Doom. Yes.
John,
Okay.
I'm gonna say
You said
the
LOD,
Legion
and
of
I had
Doom.
no idea what that. Legion of Doom, I know that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, obviously, one of the members of the Legion of Doom, who is now sadly recently passed, was the father of St. Louis Rams legend James Laurinaitis, John Laurinaitis.
Okay. Yeah, I knew he was a wrestler. I did not know about the specific
He was one of the
tag
members of the
teams. But
Legion of
yeah.
Doom. These were
Gotcha.
just like dudes whose like really their gimmick is they came out with like shoulder pads with spikes on. Their faces were painted and they were just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, when your names are Hulk and Animal, you're not, Road Warrior Hulk, Road Warrior Animal, whatever you call it. Like these dudes were just like pounding people. Like, and to be fair, like if you got Prime LOD versus Prime Dudley's, like that could be a fun match. Like
That's
in
a
terms
match that
of,
has a body count.
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure anyone walks away from the match, but because they brought.
Imagining Bubba in a Doomsday device, like a proper Doomsday device.
That'd be fantastic. He would sell it so good, though.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's yeah. And like they're purely just like they're fun. And at this point, like, I'm trying to build the promotion. Like, I could have done the easy thing and gone like, oh, I'll take the Hardy Boys as my last one. But I'm like, we actually saw that. Where's the fun in taking that?
Yeah.
Like,
You get a
give
dream
me
match there.
dreams I could have. Like, I'll be honest. I was deciding between them and APA because I just love the APA so much.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? The crazier, like, because just think down the road, like with my promotion too, like, this is how my brain's thinking. Like, you could have some sort of mashup where you get Kane with the Legion of Doom
Oh my god.
in like a triple threat or in like a 6-man tag match with
Yes.
the Dudleys and like Randy Orton. Like, that would be
Yeah.
awesome.
I
So,
would pay a lot of money to see that.
yeah, I would. I keep trying to convince my wife to go to Vegas for Mania next year.
I'm
she's like,
mad Minneapolis close.
yeah, I would have preferred that, but Vegas could be fun. But she's like, you have to find someone to go with. But now that I know that JackJohn likes to go, we have to find like a neutral one in the Midwest, and we'll just meet up and go.
I'm waiting for Indianapolis. They spend all the money on the Super Bowl, on March Madness. Spend money on WrestleMania, please.
I mean,
Lucas Oil
I
can
will
hold
say
it.
I would go to Indy, and I could get my wife to go to Indy because she loves the city of Indianapolis. So
We haven't had a WrestleMania since WrestleMania 3, I think it was.
yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think St. Louis could do a good Mania.
St. Louis, yeah, they
Yeah,
did a
well-
Rumble a couple.
Yeah, Rumble was a couple of years ago, and I almost actually signed up to be like essentially a professional seat filler there because you can just go for free. And they're like, basically what it is we'll just move you around depending on where the cameras are to make sure there's no empty seats, but you get to watch for the Royal Rumble for free. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
And I forget. I,
I was gonna say St. Louis is basically equidistant between where the two of you are. Like,
That's fair.
there's not another city that's like even close to as big. That's more centrally located.
But it's like, yeah, I need to get to a big PLE sometime because, like, I mean, Mania would be awesome sometime. Because that would be like I'm taking the entire week off work. I'm going there and enjoying like 4 days of it. And
yeah.
But gosh, that I have to save for that.
Yeah, that's gonna be inexpensive.
Yeah, it's like that's the problem with Vegas. It's like just everything's already expensive in Vegas, but
right.
You throw Mania and it's I mean, I think it makes sense for them, but
right, yeah. It being like the hub for UFC and the WWE makes sense, but for me, I'm like, no, come back to the West, please.
Yeah,
I'll even go up to Chicago. Just let me get something within 4 hours.
Yeah, it's like I would even do Chicago, and that's like 8 hours for me. I just drive to St. Louis and then catch the train and then just sleep on the train. But so that's my official thing, is that I feel I've connected with Jack John enough to where it's like we have to meet up and go to a wrestling event.
If there's a big four in the Midwest, we're hitting it.
Yeah, for sure. Ohio doesn't count. I don't want to see Logan Paul's hometown.
No. I would even go back and do the Detroit SummerSlam.
Yeah. I'm pretty open. Like for me, like I'd even go to Texas because I'm like 6 hours from Dallas. Like,
oh, nice.
It's not bad.
All right, JackJohn, you have one pick
out.
left. You are on the board.
My last pick, I've been holding this pick because I knew this is how I was going to go. This is going to set the tone for my entire promotion. And I knew there was no way that you could draft this team, Jason, so I felt comfortable holding. When I made out my list, I listed this team third. I had Kazuchika Okada first, I had Big Boss Man at 99 second, and third, and with my last pick, my last tag team, I'm taking the Gangstas. Mustafa and New Jack are coming home, and they're going to fight Mustache Mountain in my tag feud. I almost took New Jack independent, but I was like, no. Trash bag New Jack and Mustafa in a tag team. I rewatched their debut last night in ECW against it was the Nasty Boys, I think. But like they're just so good. New Jack is just like, we talk about separating the wrestler from the everything else about them. New Jack is prime example A of that.
Yeah.
So New Jack is the one that shouted out O.J. Simpson because he, two down, yeah. Okay,
yeah, we got two less, yeah. So, New Jack is we want to, like, yeah, memes aside, New Jack is a fantastic hardcore wrestler. He does one thing very, very well, and like you talk about like a 6-man tag, like we could have New Jack, Mustafa, and Mike Awesome versus Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate, and Keith Lee. Like just like a fun 6-man that should never exist, but really fun to think about. But yeah, car crash wrestling at the very end of it. I'm taking this.
That's a fantastic one to go out.
Yeah, I had a feeling. I was like, he's not going to take New Jack. I can hold this one.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing is, it's like you had this list is like still like so much a reflection of like how I feel at this time. If I were to do this draft 6 months from now, it could be completely different.
Yeah, and I talked about it a little bit, but like I could have easily taken like Will Ospreay, Zack Sabre junior
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Kenny Omega. Love Kenny Omega. But like true to me, I know who I want on my list, and New Jack is in that area.
And honestly, like you strike me as the kind of guy that if you were starting a promotion, it would be more in that ECW kind of vein.
It's my list is like bruisers, hardcore wrestlers, and people who just look cool.
Yeah,
like the most technical person on my list is Eddie Guerrero. But after that, you'd have to look at Okada, and then like it just kind of like starts going into bruisers after that. Like there's a vibe on my show, and the Gangstas cap that vibe, and also probably cap a couple people on the roster.
Say, all right. So how do I? I just like. This is an interesting thing now because now I have to have someone like I need another woman, and I need someone to be able to feud with Rhea.
Ooh.
And I feel like you can go a couple of ways with it. You could try like because Rhea, you could make her either one, your babyface or your kind of thing. And there's a lot of women I thought about. Here like honestly, I think Lita would have been fun, but I don't know if she fits with Rhea. Because I almost feel like I have to get somebody that can stand up to her physically.
Yeah.
Which leaves me with a couple of options, but I think the one, and this isn't even one that I had necessarily even thought of. Like, I didn't even have this one written down, but I've been sitting here thinking, who would I want to see? And I have it between, there's two in my head. And I think what I'm going to end up going with, I think I have to go here with the Ninth Wonder.
Yes.
Take China versus
Oh,
Rhea.
yes.
Like,
Inject it into my veins.
yeah, I mean, like, I remember, like, my mind being blown as a kid the first time seeing China. I'm like, wait, women can be ripped and buff like that. Like,
And she's just like press slamming people.
yeah, like, I mean, she, first woman to compete in a men's rumble, and like, and it wasn't just like, oh, look, there's a girl. It's like, no, she's like knocking dudes out. Like,
Yeah.
now don't get me wrong, I love some of this part, like the Beth Phoenix kissing to get the Great Khali out. Fantastic thing. And it was one of those, like, I was trying to think, like, honestly, I'll throw out some of the things, like, because we've actually got it, but like her and Charlotte are great. I think.
Yeah.
And we're this is all perfect. Well, everybody stays healthy because Charlotte's had some injury trouble. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, a person, I'll throw out a name, somebody I really love today, but they can't stay healthy. Raquel Rodriguez. I think she's great, and I think she could be a good one because she's almost like this. She's the smiley, like she could play up like I'm the good person against the evil Rhea kind of thing. I even thought like Alondra Blaze could be a fun one to throw in here in
Ooh.
this pick. Like, it was between China and Alondra Blaze for my top two there, because it's like with some of these, like Trish, I don't know, like not physically imposing. Like,
Yeah.
she was like scrappy, badass Canadian, pretty blonde. Um, it's time to rock and roll. Um, and I didn't necessarily want to pick anyone like super current with it. Like,
Yeah.
I won't lie. Like, my favorite woman, even though she's not like necessarily the best at wrestling, I'm a Bailey stan through and through.
Yes.
Like, it, and I'm the loser that, like, I want Hugger Bailey back. Like, just give me Happy Bailey, like hanging with the New Day and stuff. Like, that's all I want.
Bailey
Like,
comes
that's my
back, but she brings back the inflatable arm Lily.
Oh, dude, like, it was such a silly gimmick.
Yeah.
But like when she came in, was Sasha's partner when she made her debut out of NXT. I mean, which you want to talk about just like some of the greatest women's matches. Just watch her and Sasha in NXT.
Oh,
Which
the Brooklyn
everyone
match.
take whatever you want to take.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Like, just watching, and it's like, if she could just get a finisher that doesn't suck. Like, sorry,
The Bailey is the worst finisher of all time.
Yeah, the Rose Plant isn't much better right now. Like, it's, but she's the champ, so.
Yeah.
Another interesting one, just like throwing out another name in terms of like women. Beth Phoenix is one I thought of.
I wasn't sure if you were going for Beth Phoenix before you said
like,
China.
She's physically, like, Beth Phoenix is like incredibly strong, kind of thing. But like, and even thought like maybe a Victoria could be one, like, and
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite woman, I couldn't even draft my favorite one of all time, even though she's just like one of the most lovely people. I met her once very briefly. She was nice. Molly Holly is like one of my favorite people ever.
Yes. Superhero
Like,
Molly Holly with the Hurricane.
Yeah, Super Molly and the Hurricane. And it was great, like, when she got to come back as Super Molly and she had the thing with Nikki ASH.
Yes.
What's Nikki Cross doing now? I guess I hope she comes back as far as this, like, Uncle Howdy, whatever.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, WWE, stop teasing us. Just give us the reveal.
It wouldn't be so bad if they didn't do the exact same amount of time on the Bray Wyatt reveal before, unfortunately, all of that happened.
Yeah, and it's,
so it feels worse because the payoff hasn't happened twice.
Like, I almost feel like, to me, like, I almost hope that the reveal happens Saturday.
Yeah, it has to. It has to.
And it has to interrupt Cody and Logan, right? Like, that's how you can easily get out of there without any, the stipulation. Like, I feel like they're hopefully trying to be like, oh, Cody's gonna win, but he won't get the title because that's the stipulation Logan put in or whatever. But
yeah,
and it's interesting. Like, I think there's just a lot of like speculation as to who all is going to be involved with it. Like, I think we all pretty much know that, like, the Uncle Happy character, obviously, he should at least have had a first refusal on it.
Yeah,
and everything. And then obviously there's a lot of speculation of like Alexa's going to be involved.
Yeah.
For another
Who-
obvious reason there with
Yeah.
Bo.
Who
but
of the 6 will be interesting to see?
yeah, I think like it's not going to happen on the, but I think it'd be hilarious if, like Broken Matt Hardy came back and was in it. Like that would be fantastic. But I think
I would love that if and I said this earlier, if Matt Hardy could walk in a straight line cringing because his back is just so mutilated. But that's another point for another time.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I bet like Eric Rowan will probably be back, I would assume.
Yeah.
Because I think he's been like signed, but it's hush hush from whatever. I don't know. That's a whole other thing. That's for the wrestling podcast that JackJohn and I want to start planning after the draft.
Honestly, it goes to the top of my desk pile of podcasts I've talked about. The wrestling one that I've always wanted.
I mean, it's my thing right now. Like, I'd love to do it, like, in terms of, like, oh, it'd be fun to do, but, like, I also know there's people, like, dedicate their entire lives to, like, doing nothing but, like, content creation for wrestling. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Like,
yeah, wrestling fandom is fun. Wrestling work is not gross, but exhaustive.
Yeah, and I guess it just depends on what you want to kind of, it can become as exhaustive as you want it to.
Yeah. I'm not trying to have a podcast where I review for a week. No, thank you, please.
No, definitely not.
All right, so I do find it interesting that neither one of you took Dennis Rodman.
Rodzilla.
He is a wrestler.
At that point, I can also
few,
take Danny Bonaducci because there was a wrestling show that Hulk Hogan did, and they were both on it as like become a wrestlers. Hulk Hogan Celebrity Wrestling, I think, is what it was called.
Yeah,
but Rodman was a part of the NWO. That is correct.
You could have taken former President Donald Trump. He's a wrestler.
I'd rather take Rosie O'Donnell.
I don't know that she's ever wrestled, but I'll take your word for it.
There is a very dark period of wrestling. Back when the two of those people were feuding, Vince McMahon booked a Rosie impersonator to fight a Donald impersonator.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Wrestling, it used to not be cool, man. It barely is now, but it used to really not be cool.
It's funny to think about. Like, it's amazing I turned out as normal as I did watching that at like the formidable ages that I was. Like,
yeah.
I will say, I understand based off of what I hear about kind of like the history of wrestling, based on like how old I was, like at the point of would have been like the formative time to get into wrestling. It does sound like it was pretty bad then. It does sound like I was not missing out on.
The highs were high.
Yeah, I mean, like at the peak of, at least like for me, like the thing that'll never be topped is like when you heard the glass shatter for Stone Cold, and you just like, and he's a guy that like frankly was just like he was too obvious of a pick for to put in this draft because like people are gonna listen to this, but well, you didn't put Hogan, you didn't put The Rock, you didn't. Put,
Yeah, I will say that, like, I joked about the Rodman thing, but, like, even I could name 10 wrestlers that were not picked here.
It's almost like the here's a guy approach. Like, they're too big for my promotion, but I will take some other people.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit weird if, like, I know Alex is going through a thing right now where he's doing people who were involved with, like, the Lincoln assassination. He's like, now I'm going to talk about John Wilkes Booth. Like, I don't think so, man. I think people know about him.
Right, and, like, again, like, we could have, like, I took Okada's, like, obviously the biggest person I took. But, like, it could have been so easy just to pick, like, again, like, the top 5 people from AEW right now. And the top, like, we could have taken Roman Reigns, and it would have been perfectly reasonable to do so, but
like
it wouldn't have felt right.
Yeah, and it's like, and even like it's like you look at like NXT or like recent NXT calls that aren't huge. Like I don't like I love Trick Willie right now. You're like, what he's doing is fantastic in NXT, or like honestly like it's a shame that they're never going to put him over, but like what Baron Corbin did down NXT to come back up,
Yes.
he reinvented himself so
Yeah.
well, and now he's just going to be there to like he helped put Ilya over and the King.
Yeah. Like Gunter was on my long list, but he didn't quite make my top 10. But he's probably my favorite wrestler right now.
I mean, like, or even like a guy like like a guy who was on my list, not super, but like Bruno.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
the man whose record will never come close to being broken because he was like champion for like over 1,000 days.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I had on my list still Aleister Black / Malachi Black. The Black Mass is the best finisher of all time, and it will stand for
it's a
nothing.
good finisher.
I had Sami Zayn, Pentagon Jr. for one of my other classics. Yeah, like what I love about wrestling is you can find whatever you want to enjoy out of wrestling, and it's somewhere being produced. There's literally something for everybody. If you want massive, hard-hitting, big dudes hitting big, there's stuff for that. If you want absolute silliness, there's stuff for that. Hardcore death matches still exist. GCW still putting out shows today. There's literally anything for anybody, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, yeah, like John, if you ever have time, I want you to look up the Boogeyman.
Oh my god!
I actually just want to see your reaction. Please look up the Boogeyman from WWE.
Am I just looking up a picture of him?
Yes. Yeah. So
okay,
we talked about it before you got on the call. He didn't make my written
goodness.
list, but I thought about putting him on because he's just like a staple of my childhood.
Yeah. This dude came out and was legitimately like eating worms.
It was like Darth Maul. It's
his theme song goes, "I'm the Boogeyman."
I'm the Boogeyman. It's so great. Just like he's like, I'm not even trying, but he would like crawl out like on all fours with this like giant staff and
like 45 worms hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah,
it seems like a very interesting fellow.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's
taking
fun.
Him on my draft. I'm just gonna start picking people now.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't throw out. I know I said this in our chat before, but shout out to my son who, when I asked him who I should pick, because the song has played nonstop in my house for the last 2 weeks, he said that I should pick Joe Hendry.
Yes,
the greatest theme song in wrestling. Like,
it's such an earworm of a song.
It's just recently kind of like picked up. Like people are like, because like the song's been around for like 5 years. It's not But it's funny because like I started after hearing the song, like, I started watching some of his stuff because TNA's got
good.
Stuff. He is good in the ring. He's good on the mic. Like it's only a matter of time before somebody's going to throw money at him. And like, can you imagine if his theme song plays at AEW or like the crowd's going to lose it?
AEW would eat that up. Yeah.
Yeah, like he fits, I think, more in an AEW thing right now.
Yeah.
But it's I mean, and then like that was a joke when they're it's really funny because my son doesn't sit down to watch enough, so like he really can only name a couple of wrestlers, but he says that his favorite wrestler because the first time he sat down and watched, asked who's that guy. Bobby Lashley is my son's favorite wrestler, and I'm like, it's really a shame that you're watching him now, like not when he was in his prime.
Yeah, TNA hold all the belts. Bobby Lashley was a beast.
Yes, and I'm like, I mean, to be fair, like you look at the man and he's still incredibly imposing.
He's like 45 and he looks better than most people on any.
Yeah, and it's which I mean, like some of these guys, like I want to know what R-Truth does to stay in shape. Like he's in his 50s, and he's a tag team champion out there. I mean, the great like. First of all, like I had him on my list just from entertainment. I almost like if I was going pure entertainment, I was going to draft him and Santino Marella.
Oh yes.
I mean, like, just it's so good because like I've seen multiple interviews Santino's on, like the CVV one he does great because it's like no, the dude, like these were just like normal American people like, oh, I'm gonna do this like like terrible Italian accent and get everyone's names right, but he just got everyone right. Like the John Cena, fantastic because he was like, he gets him to break or listen here YKJ or whatever he says to Jericho. It's so good. And then R-Truth, like he's a gem. Like
he's timeless.
Stay on our television like
Yeah.
as long as you can, because they just like he's the bumbling idiot.
R-Truth bringing a ladder into a Royal Rumble to grab the Money in the Bank briefcase that isn't there.
Yeah. Running out over Valhalla's entrance into the women's rumble because it's the same number that he's going to enter in later in the men's rumble. It like this is the guy. He's a 50-year-old African American gentleman. He's in great shape. He's a champion with the Miz of Real World fame.
Yes, Mike the Miz Mizanin.
Yes, which
Okay,
my wife
I know
knows who
that.
he is.
I've heard that name. Yeah.
From the Real World, but like if you just like if you're gonna watch something that wants to like just make you like smile at wrestling, like, just watch like a compilation of like R-Truth's best moments. Because most of the time it ends them going, "Oh, my bad," and he just like backs out. Runs
my bad, y'all. That one's on me.
That was on me. Guys, they're not chips. They're not crisps. They're ruffles. It's the most like ridiculous promotion for like something that's just like nice.
He's so good.
He's such a like. I mean, his whole thing with like the 24/7 championship when that was going on was it's classic. He's like those are ones I thought of like okay from just a pure entertainment. Which it's funny because like he says his childhood hero was John Cena, but he's
despite
John Cena. So it's so but like it's funny now because his like literal entire moveset has just become John Cena's moveset. Where he does the shoulder tackles.
Yes.
And the 8.
The 5 moves to doom from Cena.
Yeah, 5 knuckle shuffle. And, it's so good.
All right. Well, this has truly been a learning experience for me. So I did write down all of the picks, but I'm sure I have mistranslated many of them. So if either one of you wants to read off your roster.
Like the word you say on this. You were going to sit in this.
Well, this is going to hurt you guys. Okay, whatever.
No, I'm going to enjoy this.
JackJohn has Kazuchika Okada.
Yep.
Mike Awesome, Lita, Eddie Guerrero. I've actually heard of Eddie Guerrero, so. Matanza, the Big Boss Man, Bull Nakano. Or Nakano. I messed that up. Okay. Keith Lee, British Strong Style, and the Gangstas.
Yes.
Jason had Kane, Tommy Dreamer, Randy Orton, the Dudley Boys, Rhea Ripley, Hornswoggle, Yokozuna, Kurt Angle, the Legion of Doom, and China.
China.
I almost did like the Trump pronunciation of China thing there. That was in tribute to WWE Hall of Famers.
Yeah, I mean,
I did not draft. I did draft in our movie draft. I drafted Marissa Tomei's performance in The Wrestler, so I have that going for me, I guess.
Wait. You went Marissa Tomei and didn't take Randy the Ram? Like, what's wrong with you?
You were here for the draft.
I know. That was a
3-hour episode, just like this one.
Yeah, it's
So after the last 3 hours, have we convinced you to become a wrestling?
at least give it a shot.
So let's put it this way: getting into wrestling seems.
This is the nicest put down I'll ever have in my life.
It seems a little bit like if I wanted to get really into like, JackJohn made the analogy of soap operas. Like if I decided like. I don't know that I've ever seen an episode of All My Children. I know that it exists. I know that it's been on for an incredibly long time. It's not like this is me binging like Seinfeld, where like there's a fair number of episodes, but it's realistic to get through it. Yeah. I'd have to watch like thousands of episodes, and it's a little intimidating. Now, do I have the time on my hands to watch it? Yeah, I do. I watch, like 500 hours of Cardinals games a year, despite the fact that I'm bored or angry during many of them. So I respect it, but maybe if you guys had been able to go 6 hours, but unfortunately...
the nicest no I've ever heard.
Well, and it's like, I would tell you this, John. the beauty of wrestling is storylines change all the time. You can
Yeah.
hop at any time. And they actually, especially like if you watch the main promotions, like WWE does a really good job every week of being like, this is how we got here. And you can
Yeah.
basically get the overall storyline from that.
I will say I do have appreciation for the way that like adults talk about wrestling in the sense of so like the first exposure I had to wrestling as an existing concept, I was like, 8 or 9 years old, just like kids I knew at school would talk about it. They all thought it was real. And I was like, come on, guys. I'm a pretty dumb kid, but like come on, this is not. But like if you can just sort of accept, yeah, it's scripted, but it's still like an incredible act of athleticism. It's still fun to watch. Like it's not like I'm watching like, The Godfather and being like, this is such bullshit. This is not real. This is not really happening. That is Diane Keaton. I saw her in Annie Hall. That is not the same person.
Those are not his real hoes.
Dude, you are just like, oh my gosh, you're killing my vibe right now. I know.
Yeah. All due respect to the many characters of Diane Keaton, the Godfather actor that I decided to pick on for no particular reason. I'm sure she's a big fan of the show.
Yeah. Hey, that's my joke.
All right. Well, I think it is time that we wrap this baby up. Everyone can chime in on who they think the winner is. In my opinion, the real winner, the listeners.
Absolutely.
In 3 hours of content for free.
Yeah, big thanks to JackJohn for, joining and doing this ridiculously long episode with me. The guy that all outside of a few Twitter DMs I had never communicated with before, and it was just kind of seamless how we hopped in. I feel like, and this is the end of the show, so promote what you got going on, man. Tell people where they can find you, and I'm sure you probably have a larger following than we have here. But hey, maybe we could turn some more people your way as we pick up steam.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to be on, guys. I really do appreciate it. A ton of fun. You can find me on Twitter at Papa_JackJohn. You can find me on my personal Twitch page at PapaJackJohn. I'm playing a bunch of shenanigans. I spent this morning playing Superman 64. It is as bad as the memes say it is.
Yeah.
It's
I am familiar with that game.
Yeah, I played it. I got to level 2 before I got angry and quit. But it's been a ton of fun playing games like that. And you can check out the podcast that I do called Here's a Guy. We've talked about it a bunch. Talking about history's most insane people you've probably never heard of and their stories. So please come check those out.
All right, Jason, where can the people find you?
They can find me on the Twitters at DraftDayDadShaw. Be sure to follow the podcast at DraftDayPod on Twitter as well. I won't even promote the Facebook page because I don't understand Facebook and how to post stuff on there. It's confusing.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did with the St. Louis Bullpen Facebook page. I kind of forget to post on it, even though it by far draws more traffic than any other social media. But, oh well. You can follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at JohnJF125. Check out stlpen.com for my baseball writings. Haven't had anything for the last week or so, but I am planning on having some stuff coming out very shortly. And that's pretty much all we have. So thank you to all for listening. Thank you to JackJohn once again for contributing wrestling content. I hope everyone enjoyed my occasional interjections of the minimal knowledge I have, but we needed somebody to do some heavy lifting, and we really appreciate it. Jason, appreciate the fact that you're the one of us that knows wrestling. I'm not sure what sport I know the best that you don't know, but we'll have to figure out what it is. Maybe like NASCAR? I don't know.
Ooh, Indy 500 weekend.
But you started getting into NASCAR, though, because your wife, so yeah, I probably don't have you there either. Yeah. Indy 500, I don't I mean, I know that it's this weekend. I took a tour at Indianapolis Motor Speedway last November. That is the extent of my inputs. So yeah, I'll be watching that, unlike people in Indianapolis. So
Yeah, I've got to illegally watch it because Indianapolis is stupid.
yeah, got a basketball team that all good people hope will beat the Celtics. I'm pretty sure the Fever haven't won a game yet, but there are others to come.
There's a reason they picked first in the draft.
There sure is. All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and yeah, that's we should probably have a better closeout for our episodes, huh? Bye, everybody.
Peace.
But